Okay guys, how are you keeping? Are you well? You're very, very welcome to another episode of the From the Depths podcast. As always, my name is Emmett, and you are very, very welcome to another week and another episode of the show. So, I hope you're all doing well wherever you are. I am in absolutely fucking fantastic form. I'm slowly and surely coming to grips with the fact that gigs and life again is returning in some form or another over the coming weeks and months. And it's not a case anymore of looking way down the line. It's imminent, it's coming, thanks bit of Jesus. Seeing everywhere that gigs are being announced for November onwards, which is fucking fantastic. And they're big gigs too, and they're not outdoor gigs. So it's looking very, very likely that we will be returning to our local venues at some point just after Halloween, and I am very much looking forward to that. I can tell you already, I have booked off the October bank holiday weekend from work, and look, I thought I'd save myself some hassle by doing so, because look, if what John was saying on the episode there, I interviewed him, one of the first episodes of the podcast. I'm of course talking about Tall John of Bad Reputation, Ireland. He was saying that they have 3 days put aside in October for the siege, so I'm thinking, do you know something? Better be safe and sorry in that regard and get that time off now. And as well as that, look, if it ends up being 2 days of like a live cast or something like that, it's grand. I can be guilt free and hungover in my own house, and I'd only fucking love it. And that's another thing too. The pubs are going to be open again. Pubs have already opened in England. It's an outdoor thing. It's going to stay outdoor for the summertime, which is fine. Even when it rains in Ireland during the summer, it rains heavy because of the humidity and all that kind of crack. But we all did it as teenagers. Do you know what I mean? We all did it as teenagers, drinking. And when we had no shelter, do you know what I mean? We were drinking under trees, getting torrentially rained on. We all did it during the winter time too, so it would have been freezing. So do you know something? Being sheltered out in a smoking area, drinking pints under umbrellas with mates, I'll take it. Do you know what I mean? Got a lot of practice in that regard. So anyway, enough about all of that crack. Let's talk about what's going to be happening on this week's episode of the show. So, as you can tell by the title, on this week's episode of the show, I have a good mate of mine by the name of Mr. Cian Hehir on to chat about the studio albums of thrash metal icons Metallica. Cian is a very, very good mate of mine. I'd consider him one of my best mates. Been friends with Cian since I was about 16 years of age, and we both got into Metallica at the same time. Him before me anyway. And he was a big part of me getting into Metallica when we were teenagers. We were in a band together years back, which we touch on a little bit at various points throughout the interview, or throughout the episode I should say. It's not really an interview at all, to be honest. It's just two mates having a beer or two and talking about Metallica. And you know what was weird doing this was, I should probably go back to the start a little bit. I knew I was going to be doing this segment on the show, and I knew I was going to be having various guests on to talk about various bands and rank the albums and stuff like that. Metallica is obviously going to be the first one, because it's a band that the majority of you listening to this are very, very familiar with. It seems that, from what I've gauged from when I started to post a little bit telling people I was going to be doing this topic, I should say, on this week's episode, I could tell from the get-go that there doesn't seem to really be any in-between with Metallica. People either really, really like Metallica, or people fucking have no time for Metallica. Whereas I would be kind of impartial to Metallica. They were a big part of me getting into metal when I was a teenager. They were the soundtrack of those bush drinking sessions, like I just mentioned there, being out hiding under trees in torrential rain with mates, and we'd be blaring like Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning and stuff like that. But yeah, people seem to be really, really unhappy that I was doing this for the first, that I was using Metallica for the first episode of the show, or of this topic, or of this series of such, if that makes any fucking sense. But I thought Metallica was a pretty safe one to do. You know, they're kind of a band, like I said, that everyone's familiar with. It wouldn't really be fair, I think, to a lot of you if I was to go and do it about a band like fucking Jesus, I don't know, like Anal Cunt. Like, imagine if I'd went and did the first episode of Best to Worst about Anal Cunt. Do you know what I mean? That's instantly, like, a lot of people don't listen to Anal Cunt to begin with. And it would be a little bit alienating. Whereas I think, covering a few big bands to start off this little segment of the show is pretty fair. And it's something as well that you can all engage with at home. Like, me and Cian, throughout this episode, we share opinions. Like, you all know, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. And if you don't agree with them, that's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Hop on hop on, have a rebuttal with us or something like that for the crack. It's I've said this before and I'll say it again and again and again. This podcast is my attempt at recreating those smoking area conversations and that vibe. So if you, I've been on the receiving end of that before, where like I've shared a musical opinion in the smoking area of a pub with mates, particularly at gigs, and someone will go out of their way to turn around and confront me about it and be like, "What? Like, do you know what I mean?" But anyway, I'm ranting. That's one thing I noticed as well. Cian doesn't do it as much on this episode. I do it a fucking lot, man. I go off on tangents like mad. And you know, it's actually gas since doing this. This was only recorded a few days back. And I've noticed since recording it, there is one or two things that I say on the episode that are inaccuracies. Because just, I don't know if my mobile was listening to me or what. But, you know, like this day in metal, like pages like that where they you know, like on this day in 1980 something or whatever, this happened. And I've actually one of the, or two of those pop up that have corrected me on the factoids I thought that were right. But sure, look. Shit happens. Anyway, before we get on to that, I have to do the housekeeping and all of that crack. On Cian's end, Cian is the drummer in Limerick-based thrash band New Age Messiah. We should be having those lads on in a few months when they have their EP recorded. They are scheduled to be recording an EP in the next 6 weeks. They have a logo done up by Obsidian Imagery, which is killer. It's up on their Instagram, and you can find them at New Age Messiah. As well as that, like the lads are going to be coming back gigging in Mad Force. They're a great band to gig. They'll play absolutely anywhere and everywhere like that, and I mean that in the best way possible. They're workhorses with regards to gigging. And yeah, I was saying it to him, I don't know if I said it on the episode, but I definitely said it on the Zoom call when we recorded this, that they ought to have a fucking savage launch party for this EP when it comes out, because we're going to be so close to gigs coming back when the EP comes out, and I imagine that's going to be the autumn as well. So yeah, I fully expect there to be a savage old New Age Messiah session when that EP drops. But he does mention as well, towards the end of the interview, that they do have merch on the way as well. And yeah, so give them a follow at New Age Messiah on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook too. They also have a few tracks up on YouTube, not on Spotify yet, but I do imagine that, like I said, I do imagine the EP is going to drop in the autumn time. I've seen the artwork for it too. The artwork is pretty cool. I'm not going to be an arsehole and share it online, because I was asked to swear to secrecy that I wouldn't, and of course I wouldn't do that. But it's cool. I'm very much looking forward to seeing this on a Digipack CD when it comes out. And yeah, the housekeeping on our end. You know the crack, lads. If you want to support the show, the handiest way and the nicest way you can do so is, of course, by sharing episodes on Instagram. I'll always, if someone shares an episode from the depths, be sure to tag us. I'll always reshare it and everything like that. And as well as that, on that regard as well, if you have something that you want to promote and it's metal related, or even if it's not metal related, get in touch, and if it's appropriate for me to promote it, I will, of course. And obviously I'm not going to ask for any money or any of that crack. I like being sound, and I like supporting local heads when I can in any regard. And I may or may not have a few updates in that regard. I am inquiring about a little bit of merchandise to do with the podcast at the moment, but obviously, you know, I can't expect anyone here listening to the podcast to want to wear From the Depths podcast t-shirt or anything like that. But I did think, you know, with retail outlets opening up and everything like this, and people being out and about, there's been one or two things that I've eyed that I'm kind of like, you know, something I could actually make this happen. So I'll say nothing until it's confirmed. But yeah, again, after going on a tangent. But anyway, if you want to support the show, like I said, best way you can is by sharing it and all of that crack. Sharing episodes, getting the good word out, liking and supporting the page's social media accounts, or the show's social media accounts, is a huge, huge help. If you give us a follow on Instagram, it is at From the Depths Metal, and if you go onto Facebook, you will find us at From the Depths Metal Radio. We usually have a weekly radio show at Wired FM, but it's off season now. We won't be back again until early October. But I am thinking about investing or exploring the world of Twitch streaming. We'll again see how that goes as well over the summer. Don't expect that until early July. I'm still on placement for college at the moment. And I'm doing my portfolio for that as well at the moment. So between the podcast, the portfolio, and placement itself, and my job outside of all that, shit is pretty heavy at the moment, and it's a job in itself getting the podcast done, but I love doing the podcast, so that's absolutely no hassle at all. And you know, the more of you that come back to listen every week, the more crack it is to do it. And as well as that, before we get into this week's episode and everything like that, just a heads up to all of you listening, or an invite more so than a heads up. Cian came onto this as a mate just to talk about metal. And that's a huge reason that I started this podcast, is because that's what I really missed throughout this pandemic, was being able to chat to fuckers about metal. Now, we've gotten that back a little bit over the course of the past few weeks, being able to see people here and there and stuff. But I miss having those conversations with total fucking strangers. And I am throwing out an open invite right now. If you are a listener of this podcast, you don't know me, and you are big into a particular band, and whether I'm into them or not, throw me a message on Instagram, throw me a message on Facebook. Let me know what band it is, and if you're open to coming on and talking about it, we can totally arrange that and make it happen. Of course, if it is the case of a band that I'm not familiar with, you're going to have to give me a few weeks to go back and listen to all the albums, take notes and all that crack. And just a word of warning as well, if you approach me with like and I just, this is, I don't mean this in a rude way, I have given these subgenres 101 chances, and it's just not for me. I will not go out of my way to listen to progressive metal. I will not go out of my way to listen to gent. I will not go out of my way to listen to deathcore or metalcore. Other than that, I'm pretty easy. Black, death, grind, new wavum, thrash, do you know what I mean? Power metal, folk metal, do you know, drone metal, anything. I'll listen to anything, just except for the first few that I mentioned a moment ago. Don't come near me with any gent, metalcore, deathcore, or prog metal. It's just not my cup of tea at all. And you know, more power to you if you're into that stuff. I have honestly given it 110. All subgenres that I've asked not to be suggested or recommended with relation to bands that you wanted to do with this segment. We went, let me try that sentence again. That was fucking an absolute arse wave of a sentence. Don't come near me with any deathcore, metalcore, gent or prog metal. I have honestly given those subgenres 101 goes. It's just not for me, and I don't want to be wasting your time or mine by talking about a set of albums that I really don't enjoy. You should be able to get a fair shake at it, and all that crap. I'm done talking now. Let's go into this week's best to worst. Best to worst. That was the way we did it. Here's our best to worst chat with myself and Cian Hehir. Enjoy. There's less of me fucking up my sentences in this. Enjoy. All right, lads, what is the crack? You are listening to the From the Depths podcast. As always, I am your host, Emmett, and today is a very special day. It's the debut of a new segment on the show, a segment that we have titled Best to Worst, where I sit down with a guest. We're going to chat away about a band's particular albums and stuff like that, and we're going to rank them from their best to the absolute pits. And what a fucking legend to have for the first edition of this show. We have Mr. Cian Hehir of Limerick band New Age Messiah. Cian, what is the crack, man? You well?
How are we getting on, my man? I'm not too bad. And yourself?
Sure, look, I can't complain. Have beers in, talking about Metallica, could be way fucking worse. So yeah, like I said there, for those of you listening, we're going to be talking about Metallica in this episode, because I think Metallica, alongside Maiden or Sabbath, would have been the fairest way to start it off. It's a band that the majority of you listening are going to know. It's a band that myself and yourself, Cian, know pretty well, because it was the band that we were both fucking major into when we started hanging out when we were like fucking 16 years of age.
Yeah, and it was the band. I think the first song we covered was Enter Sandman. I remember going into the recording, or went into the practice space in the youth centre, and like the four of us looked at each other and was like, "Who goes first?" We didn't know what to do. It was like the first band I think I was ever in. I don't know, was it the first band you were in as well?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Yeah, no, I was never... the closest I was... for context now, for those of you listening, myself and Cian were in a band together when we were teenagers with a few mates, Jordan McGrath, Ian Eustace, and Mr. Matt McCarthy over in the UK. We had 101 different names. We were... and that was my fault that we had 100 different names. I take full fucking blame for that now. But we were the Sulphur Dogs at one point. We were Xanthium at another. Was there anything other than that, or was that it?
I think they were the two main ones that we kind of used, but there was maybe 10 or 15 other kind of rough ones that we had. that were
Yeah.
kind of coming in and out the whole time. Like it was mental. Like there was more names for the band than there was members. Like
The more songs as well. Jesus, we did the one song in the youth center. Was I know there was bits and pieces written here and there. There was never a full song other than that, I don't think.
no, it was kind of riffs and stuff like that, and there was just a lot of cover songs as well. Because at that age as well, when we were playing gigs, it was kind of mainly covers at that time. Like and
Yeah.
we didn't, yeah. And I think Ian told us that after we recorded the song, he was like, I ripped it off a Rihanna song. The riff. Shut up and drive. I think he said it was.
Do you know what I might do now? I might actually take that track and throw it in on the end of this episode for context now.
So you can hear the riff and Ian gets sued.
Oh Jesus! But yeah, no. The reason I even mentioned that about Xanthium and stuff like that is it was a fucking proper reflection of our age and stuff like that. I remember like we used to practice in your shed, of course, like in your shed, sorry, in your basement. Keen's home house is this huge house out the countryside, has a massive basement in it, and Jesus, I'd say we did more messing and trying to stick drumsticks up people's holes than we actually did fucking actually practice.
We were attacking each other with basketballs one day below, and I went head first into the door, but you were standing on the other side. So you just got clocked by the door. The two of us were having cuts in for the rest of the evening. Like, oh,
That explains so much now. This is why I didn't do a good leaving cert. Like,
yeah, we won't blame the drink or anything like that.
oh Jesus, no, I won't blame that at all.
Can't
But
blame that.
yeah, I remember like the first time calling to your house and stuff like that, and I remember outside of like going to the basement and stuff like that. And I bring this up now because it has to do with today's episode and stuff like that. Is I remember so vividly seeing you had a Debt Magnetic poster and a live shot. It was either of Lars or James. I can't remember fully, but I know it was a live shot of one of the two from around and the Unjustice for All tour. Would have been around the time of that live shit binge purge live album from like 90 or no, it was from I think it was from like 89, yeah.
Yeah.
But
what a good show as well.
oh Jesus, yeah, that's getting mentioned later on. Damn, that's a point to mention as well about this episode is with these best to worst episodes, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about studio albums, because if we go down the rabbit hole, especially with a band like Metallica of talking about live albums, bootlegs and all that, oh yeah, I was saying before, and we'd be here for hours, like, do you know what I mean? And for better or for worse, I think this is one of those bands that regardless of what way that you know, I don't know what your list is like, and obviously don't know what mine is like yet. And you know, it could be an order of release. You know, it could be an order of sales or whatever like that, and people still wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
There's going to be pissing off people either way. So
100%.
it's just a bit of crack and everything like that. So for the love of God, if anyone's listening and isn't happy with either of our lists, please don't go raping our DMs after this. Like, you know, it's just a bit of crack.
You can email me and I don't give a fuck. Oh, stop. But there's so much room for argument as well as Metallica. Because like there's people out there that like genuinely love the kind of mid to late 90s albums like Load and Reload and stuff. And look, they weren't bad hard rock albums, but look, we'll get into that when we get talking about them.
Yeah, and you know, that's a really interesting point to bring up even before we start off the list, was like normally, you know, with a band like Metallica or a band like Maiden or any of those big bands, it's normally a struggle to try and pick like the top three because they normally have so many albums. I'll admit now I struggled between two to pick my favorite, but the hardest I found was kind of around the middle, because there's a few albums that Metallica have that definitely aren't like, you know, some people love them, but they're not like, you know, they're not awful or anything like that, but they're definitely not top tier, but they're not bad enough that you'd want to put them near Metallica's worst albums either. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's so much like wiggle room there. Like, because I remember that when Hardwired came out, their latest album, when I listened to it first, I was like, Jesus, they're really coming back. But upon more listens, I was kind of like, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I don't know, like, because I felt like Debt Magnetic as well itself was a bit lazy in places.
Yeah.
You know, especially with Lars's drumming, some of it was comical. Like, still good in some ways. Like, he'd be so good with his timing in some ways, and then you'd be like, what is that drum fill that he's doing? Like,
yeah,
falling all over the drum kit.
That was actually good. Like looking back, I'm looking at my list now. That was one where it was like I have them in two very different parts of the list now. There's an album between them, but I actually struggled quite a bit to pick the preference over that. And I had to, because see, Hardwired now and Debt Magnetic would be two that I wouldn't have really listened to all that much. Debt Magnetic I listened to a lot when I was getting into Metallica. Hardwired Self Destruct I listened to a lot when it came out. I came back to one or two songs where I was kind of like, oh, this is all right and everything. This past weekend, prepping for this podcast now, was probably the first time I listened to the album in full, I'd say, in
Mm.
about maybe 2 years. Definitely wasn't disappointed with it or anything like that, but it is one of those albums
Yeah.
you're kind of like, do you know something? I get ahead of myself now. We'll get to that when we get onto the list. So here's what I'll do is I'll start it off. I'll start it off just to give because you're the first person on for this, just to give you an idea of how we'll do it. So we're starting off with our favorites, and then we're going down bit by bit. So my number one. This was a fucking pain in the hole to pick because it's always between these two. It wasn't my favorite for a while, but it was very very close. My all-time favorite for years when it comes to Metallica was always Kill 'Em All. It was always Kill 'Em All, and there was no budging it. But over the pandemic, I found I've been coming back to Ride the Lightning way, way more. And
Yeah.
you know, there was the thing when prepping for this where I was kind of like, I have to listen to every album at least once prepping for it. I've listened to Ride the Lightning the past week, I'd say at least 6 or 7 times. I actually listened to it today again on the walk back from work. Like, Jesus
Nice.
H fucking Christ. It's when it comes to Metallica albums and stuff like that, the reason that I would put this as my favorite with a bullet is I always loved Kill 'Em All because you could hear like the new wave British heavy metal influence, you could hear the punk influence, you could hear the Motorhead, the Maiden, you could hear all that on it. And that was what I loved so much about it for ages. But then just listening to Ride the Lightning, there a lot of people would make the argument that Metallica really come into their own on Master of Puppets. I would
Mm.
go a step further and be like, it's there on Ride the Lightning for sure. Like Fight Fire with Fire to open up with that. That is literally just like you have that nice little acoustic bit, and then you're fucking face fucked with that riff straight away, like when it comes in. And you're just kind of like, I'd love to have been a young fella in like fucking, I don't know, was it 83 or 84 that Ride the Lightning came out, but just to be sitting beside the speakers, because even that acoustic bit at the start of that song would have been enough of a thing to kind of throw Metallic fans off,
Yeah.
let alone then when you get to Fade to Black and stuff like that. But like, I'd honestly make the argument that there is not a bad song to be found on this album. Some would say that Fade to Black is a bad song. I don't think it's a bad song at all.
No.
Must have been weird for people to hear Metallica play a ballad back then. But to be
Yeah.
fair, when you compare it to other ballads the band would do later on in their career, I think it's pretty savage. But you know,
Yeah.
you've got classics like the title track, Ride the Lightning. You got For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's still a staple in their set list. The same with Creeping Death. The song that people seem to slate the most on this album, I love quite a lot, which is actually Escape. I loved the intro harmonized bit to Escape. It sounds like a power metal
Yeah.
song. Several
Yeah.
years before
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
metal was a thing, you know. And other than that as well, one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs is on this album that I don't think gets enough credit, and it is without a doubt Trapped Under Ice. That is fucking
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. If I sat here if I sat here and kept talking about this, I could do a podcast all about Ride the Lightning on its own. But I'm going to save you all the board. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pass the floor over to you, Keane. So, your favorite Metallica album, starting off with the best. What's your pick?
For me, anyway, I had to pick Injustice for All, just based on like how well structured all the songs are and how good the drumming is as well. It's me myself being a drummer, I love playing along to all of the songs, and that actually made me think because I found it like when so the first song we did together was Enter Sandman, that, and even learning stuff off of like Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. You know, once you learned the section, you could kind of keep going with all of it. But there were so many different breakdowns and different bits, and so many different weird like bits to go on, especially Blackened. Like there was a part where the drums and the rhythm guitar are playing, and then after like 8 bars, it like swaps, and the
Mm.
beats on the bass drum and the snare drum are falling off. It's just cool technical shit there. Like, and like you can feel Cliff's influence a lot on it as well, like because he was a classically trained player and everything. And no, I just really love those albums. Like all of them, all of the first few albums are just brilliant. Like I have them here in my list. They're all in the top section. Like I've Injustice for All, Kill 'Em All in second because that's just such a banger of an album. Like, and then
Yeah.
Master and Puppets and Ride the Lightning are side by side. If any, I would pick Ride the Lightning over Puppets. But I do love them as well. Like he's insane with yourself. Like Ride the Lightning, like Trapped Under Ice is such a good song. Escape as
Yeah.
well. Like they're all just such good albums. Like revisiting them as well over the last week because I hadn't listened to Metallica in years, like properly, like bar listening to the songs here and there and listening to Hardwire when it came out. But listening to the albums again, like when all like Master of Puppets is a banger. The thing that should not be.
Oh,
I don't know
Jesus,
why,
yeah.
but just how heavy that is. I just love how heavy that is. Like, and it starts like gentle, like, and even Welcome Home Sanitarium, it has the little simple lick where you just play the harmonics at the start of it. It like starts really slow, and I like their heavy side as well, and they're well able to play fast because, like we were saying about Kill 'Em All, I love the kind of the new wave of traditional British heavy metal influences on it and stuff like that on it. And like I feel there's a few bits of speed metal influences thrown in there as well, like just with the chugging and the faster pace, like it's kind of like the do, 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 do on the drums. No, they're just banging like I don't know what to say about them. But no, Justice, I think that was one of the best musical albums anyway. For me, anyway, for Metallica, I just found that Injustice for All was definitely musically one of the best. For me, like with the different sections, different changes, different bits and pieces going on, I did genuinely think that they were class. Like it was a big shame that they lost Cliff because I don't know, was it a change in direction in the music or whatnot? But they seemed to just really tone it down after Injustice for All. Like,
And I was there about 3 weeks ago. I'll tell you a gas one now that you brought up Cliff and everything like that. Was I don't know why I was having a few cans and I was watching stupid YouTube videos on the Chromecast inside in the kitchen, and I watched that documentary. Do you know that it's like 40 minutes, like VH1 when Metallica ruled the world? We all
yeah,
would have seen it, like we were getting into Metallica and all that. But they make the point there. There's that little bit about when Cliff dies and everything like that. Which was that 86 he died, or was it 87?
I think it was 86
Yeah, I think it
because
was. I think it was. I think it was the year the album came out because they had
yeah,
played here. I only learned this recently as well, listening to, if you listen to the first episode of the Metal Cell podcast with that Richie does down in Cork. He has two older lads from Cork on it, and they're talking
yeah,
about seeing Metallica and everything like that around that time. Cliff passed away only like 6 weeks after they played Ireland. So when you see that photo of like the four of them outside that pub in like Mayo or something like that,
yeah, it's
he's
mental.
passed only a few weeks later. But the point I
Yeah,
was going saying about Cliff was I was thinking about that because they were going like, regardless of whether Cliff was going to pass or anything like that, they were opening for Ozzy on the Sin After Sin tour when they were touring Masters or Master of Puppets,
mhm,
and I think the commercial appeal thing would have been there anyway. I think they still would have done the following album, still would have been pretty heavy and stuff like that, and they were still going to keep getting bigger and bigger and everything like that. I do think they would have ended up in the position though in '89 that they did
yeah,
right in the Black Album and stuff like that, where they were consciously going to be looking for a more commercial kind of an album.
yeah,
And this is going to sound like a major hot take, and a few people now are going to
yeah.
probably think I'm full of shit saying this. I could honestly see Cliff Burton in 1989 hearing the material being written for the Black Album, saying "fuck this." Fucking off to Megadeth and taking Dave Ellison's job. And then it raises the bigger question, which makes us even more of a hot take. Would Megadeth have sounded the way they did in the 90s if Cliff Burton had been in Megadeth? But that's going down a whole fucking rabbit hole in itself. Like,
We've literally created like 10 podcast ideas here in the first 10 minutes.
this is the expanded Metallica movie universe now. Like,
All right, don't tell Marvel anyway. They'll be in and making about 40 films about it. Oh,
I,
stop.
I'll belt on up my number two since we were talking about Cliff. We're going to talk a little bit about Kill 'Em All. You just mentioned it there as well. I already went on a little bit about it there just a minute or two ago. But Jesus, this album, what I love the most about it, outside of all the influences that we just talked about a few minutes ago, what I love so much about Kill 'Em All, without a doubt, is you can hear that these lads are 16, 17 years of age
Mm,
writing the album. And a testament to that was when you think back to when we were 16, 17 years of age. And I'm not just talking about the lads that were in our band now, I'm talking about all of our circle of mates here. When we were 16 and when we were all starting to play instruments and getting into metal and buying albums and fucking making battle jackets and all of that, there was only two albums constantly on repeat when we were teenagers that were always played at sessions. One of them was Exodus's Bonded by Blood. You couldn't have a session where that wasn't played, but the other was always Kill 'Em All, without a
yeah,
doubt. And it's just
yeah.
it just sounds so fucking youthful and aggressive and just fucking pissed off. And like, you can tell the lads have a point to prove and everything like this. And what's really, really cool about it is, like, they really do go off and find their own niche on the next few albums and everything like that. But you
Big
can
time,
hear
yeah,
the influences throughout this album like mad. It's as
yeah.
if, it's as if they took their record collection, squashed it all together and made a record and had their own little touch in it. And that's what I
Yeah,
love so much about it. Like, there's certain points you can hear Diamond Head, there's certain points you can hear Motorhead there, certain points you can hear Angel Witch, do you know what I mean? And at other points you could maybe even argue that you could hear like a Venom influence and stuff like that. I know the lads lads were huge into Venom and stuff like that at the time.
Yeah.
But Jesus, man, like Phantom Lord, Metal Militia, Seek and Destroy, fucking still a staple in their set list to this day. I just, it's another case. It's these two albums. If I start going on about them, I could be here for an hour or so. Like, you know, it's not. Trust me when I say no. It doesn't. I don't have as many good words to say when we get past. What's the? I'd say once we get past number 6, I don't have too many nice words to say about some albums after that. So kind of you name drop some of your mentions in sequence on your list. So do you want to go a little bit into your number 2 again?
Yeah, so number 2 would definitely be Kill 'Em All. I couldn't, like, I was the same as yourself. I was caught between, well, I know you were saying Ride the Light, but and Justice for All and Kill 'Em All were my top 2. But I picked Injustice for the musical reasons, like, but Kill 'Em All, it's nearly nostalgic as well, like, because like you were saying, like all the sessions and everything, and like I remember Jack's birthday. We're jumping, the fire was on, and there was like the campfire in the middle of all of this. Like me being an idiot, I nosed straight into the fire, like jumping the fire, just went straight into it. Oh, like an idiot. I was wearing the leather jacket though, I was fine. I was fireproof for about 5 minutes. But no, like Kill 'Em All, like that song itself, Jumping the Fire, like there's a great energy to all of the tunes, like Metal Militia, the whole of Phantom Lord as well. Motor Breath. Remember
oh Jesus, yeah,
the band as well with Matt and Dara. That was like a song we played everywhere. That and
oh Jesus, yeah, I forgot about that. Fucking hell,
that was
making me feel old now.
I know, man. When you look back and you're like, fuck, we played a lot of gigs and stuff, and there was a lot of shows gone down and everything the whole way up through the years. Like, but Motor Breath was staple. We opened with that all the time, like, and it was just so much crack playing. It was great to get into the groove with it, like, and everything. But even when like the opening for Hit the Lights, it sounds like the end of the song. I remember the very first time I listened to Hit the Lights, I was like, wait a minute, it's like my iPod broken. It's back when I had the little iPod with the circle thing. You could flick up and down the volume and stuff.
Oh shit. Was that the little square yoke? Was that shuffle? I had one of those as well.
But I remember listening to Hit the Lights for the first time. It was just like, and when it kicked into it, then I was like, shit. Because I had listened to, like, it was a funny story actually. Before I joined up with you guys and met you guys, I had a really bad opinion on metal, like, because all the people that I knew were showing me metalcore, and I thought it was a bit trying to look for a word here that wanted Acast
take down the podcast. In simple terms, shit.
But even like I listened to a few metalcore songs. My old housemate Brenny, like, he was big into metalcore, and there's a few great riffs and stuff, but it just was never my cup of tea. Like, but that's what I kind of viewed metal as. Like, I had a very big tunnel vision with it, and I remember listening to Enter Sandman and going, "Holy fuck, I've been missing out!" Like, and then I think the next couple of songs I listened to was Hit the Lights and The Four Horsemen. And I remember hearing The Four Horsemen, and I was like, yeah, this is my thing. Like, this is definitely my thing. Like, it's just such a good tune. And I know it's Dave's song technically, but like, we'll forget about that one for now. But Kill 'Em All definitely in solid number 2. Like, if like, you know, to be number 1, but Justice for All has to be number 1. But no, definitely number 2 anyway.
I'll tell you a good one to check out. Since you were talking about Kill 'Em All, it was Metallica started doing this trend about, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's definitely one of those things. If you could find them affordably, I'd recommend everyone to pick them up. I haven't picked up any of them now because I couldn't afford it. They're very much made for collectors. It's like a definitive edition box set of each album. You're probably seeing these like €150 a piece. In fairness, I do think you get your money's worth because every single one of them comes with a book that's like this thick. You get tour posters, patches, pins. You get like fucking 18 mixes of every different way the album could be mixed. You get several live bootlegs and stuff. The Kill 'Em All one though comes with the live DVD that's up on YouTube, and I'm nearly certain it's called Live in the Fillmore from '83. But fuck me, the DVD version of it, they remastered it and everything like that, and it's actually missing video in bits. But someone took the live bootleg, VHS tape that was taken from, and I think what Metallica's camp did, where they were kind of like, we can get it some bits to this quality, but can't get others to it. So why don't we just cut them out? Whereas someone just remastered the whole thing at home the same way that someone else did with and Justice for All with the bass turning it up, and
Yeah.
it's fucking amazing. It's in HD.
I'll check that
All of
out,
them are
actually.
like 16, or well, no, they're like 17, 18 years of age, and like, do you know what I mean? James is wearing the leather leggings up to here, like, do you know what I mean? He's pulling the Phil Lynott up, holding the flying V out like this to the crowd like a gun and shit, like, do you know, it's fucking unreal. But it's up on YouTube. Remind me, actually, when we finish this up now in a bit, remind me and I'll send you on the link for it. It's definitely one of the, if you're ever sitting down having a few beers listening to music and you're like, do you know something, I want to watch a live DVD. It's honest to God, I know it's probably to do with the fact now that live DVDs aren't really a thing anymore. I'd love for them to release it on its own, but you know, the fact that someone's gone to the bother of remastering it themselves, you can watch it for free on
Definitely have to
YouTube.
check
Like,
it out.
oh, you'll love it, man. I'm
And,
telling you now. If it's one of those things, if we could have seen it at 16, 17 when we had the band going, we would have fucking shit ourselves. Like, do you know what I mean? It's
oh,
perfect.
stop.
Like,
I
so
can
my
picture it
number.
back in the day as well, though. Sorry, I cut
Oh no,
across
go
you.
on, go on.
I could just picture it back in the day. I was being in the band, like little teenies, and like, oh my god, you're released like bootleg, fuck! Oh, stop! Not so excited for anything in that regard, like back then. No, we're in our mid-20s now, and life is shite.
We can't afford our own houses. We're getting fat. We're forgetting shit. But for fuck's sake, we got some Metallica bootlegs, so it's all okay.
I know,
I'm
we
gonna.
forget everything.
What band are we talking about again?
I think it was Green Day.
I'm gonna play one with my number 3. This now is going to fucking really fuck people up when I say this now. Not that the album I'm picking is controversial at all. This album is usually people's favorite Metallica album by a mile. It's on fucking everything. They have T-shirts for it. They have fucking, you can buy baby singlets with this album cover on it. Like, you know, talking about Master of Puppets, an absolute fucking metal staple. But when I was 16, 17, I'd go as far as maybe saying 18, 19 too. There was a long time I did not get this album, and I don't know what it was.
Really?
I swear to God, yeah. And I'll tell you a weird one. You'll appreciate this now more than most. The reason I've started to appreciate that album is when I got kind of closer to 20 was I got big into early Creator. That would have been the time I was getting into, like, you know, early Creator, early Sodom. I was listening to Death Crush by Mayhem like mad. I was getting big into the first 3 Venom albums and stuff. And I just stuck on Master, because I've had Master of Puppets on CD for years. I've actually had it on CD longer than I've been listening to Metallica. A cousin of mine, or not a cousin of mine, Lena actually gave it to me for Christmas one year, which was so weird because this was before I even got into metal. She gave it to me, like, and I just didn't get it. And I remember I put it on. Then one day I was sitting in the room, no beers involved this time around, and I think it was the first time that I heard Disposable Heroes. I was just kind of like, oh. I was like, yeah, now I get it. And I remember I nearly certain I played the album about 3 or 4 times back. And it's just one of those things. Sometimes albums don't immediately click for people, but now it's one of those cases. I would say it's probably one of my most listened to Metallica albums. Jesus as well. I know boomers go on about this song like mad, but I fucking love it so much. Orion off that album, that fucking 9-minute masterpiece. Like, oh fuck me, like, it's such a good fucking album. One of those things as well, and I'm almost certain it was you or Dara, our friend Dara Kelly, was one of the two of you was the first to tell me this. We all know the album cover with, you know, the crosses and everything like that, and, you know, big fields and the clouds and all that shit. I didn't notice up until one of you told me that there's a helmet on one of the crosses on the left hand side. And now I can't, and I can't unsee that every time I look at the album cover now. It's like a fucking green pea on top of the fucking white cross, like.
I could be wrong, but isn't there hands holding strings above at the top of the album cover? Was there, or is that like maybe a limited edition thing I'm thinking of?
No,
But I thought there was
you're probably
hands with
right.
strings
You're probably right in that.
coming down for the Master of Puppets title track, like as well. Like I think so. Anyway, I could be thinking of something completely different, man. As you were saying, 25 years of age, like that thing was already like.
No, it's one of those things. It could very well be true, because the thing is, well, people older than us listen to this are going to be laughing first off because we're calling ourselves old in our mid-20s, like, you know what I mean? But I think the thing more than anything as well that a lot of people forget is, like, you know, like you and I would have been kind of the first generation to be growing up with like Spotify and YouTube and stuff like that, and like we'd be listening to music more on the go than anything else like that. So more often when we were looking at album covers as teenagers, it was thumbnails like the size of my fucking thumb here, like, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
little
thank you
things
very
like
much.
that in album covers are easily lost because you don't see them. It's not like a vinyl or a CD where you're holding it and observing it like mad. But geez, I must mention a few more songs after that. Like Disposable Heroes, like I said, that was the song that finally switched my mind and got me listening to that album properly. The title track, of course, is a fucking classic. Same with Battery. You mentioned it there. Was it was at the start of this or was it before we recorded? You were mentioning the thing that should not be.
Yeah,
That's a fucking brilliant track as well.
another great
And
tune. So.
Damage Inc. as well. It's used on
I forgot
110
all about
fucking
that.
bits of merch.
I forgot all about that. I wouldn't mind. You're right. Like it's on everything. Like
Yeah,
oh,
that's the
shit, I
thing.
forgot
Like,
all about that. What a tune! Like Leopard Messiah, what a good tune as well. You were saying that at the start. Like it's in again. Like Master of Puppets used to be my all-time favorite Metallica album. I had a back patch on my jacket for years, and then I don't know. Maybe I was a bit too cool then. I was like, this is too mainstream. And then I wouldn't mind. I put a fucking Sabaton backpatch on then for ages. Just because I loved the artwork. It was the last stand album. I had like the soldiers fighting and stuff. I just thought it was cool. But I believe in Invaders one now. I just need to put it on.
yeah, no, it's one of those things. I know there was definitely a bit of that, like when we were teenagers and everything like that. When you first start making your backjack and everything like that, everyone has like Master Puppets or Ride the Lightning or Kill 'Em All and stuff like that. And there definitely was a point when I'd say all of us got to about 19 or 20 where we were consciously pushing Metallica to the side a bit because we didn't want to be seen to be talking about Metallica and listening to Metallica all the time.
Sorry, there. No, I just had to turn off. I was getting Snapchats there on the phone. Full apologies. I turned off.
Oh, it didn't come through on this. You're all good. Do you want to belt ahead with your number 3?
So for number 3, I was caught between Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. Still can't fully decide. If I had to pick, it's hard to choose. Like, I'd probably go with Ride the Lightning, just because I kind of do like prefer a lot of the tracks off of it. But then again, I don't know. I'm just thinking about it another way. Like, Ride the Lightning though, like Trapped Under Ice, Escape, Ride the Lightning itself, Creeping Death, banger of a tune. And Fade to Black. I actually love the backstory to Fade to Black as well. I don't know how true this is, but apparently when they were on tour in Europe, a load of their amps or stacks got stolen. But they had these really class amps and they could never get the kind of right sound again from buying other amps. So they wrote Fade to Black. It sounds like such a miserable, depressing song as if they just lost their mother or their father or something. And it's about losing their gear and their equipment. I don't know how true that is now.
I'd believe it. I've never heard it, but I'd never heard that story before. But I'd well believe that. Like, do you know,
there was another interesting one as well. I heard about Ride the Lightning that apparently they were like 6 weeks in the studio and they still hadn't figured out the sound that they needed for the snare for Larson's drums for the overall sound of the album. And I think Cliff just like kind of lost the rag and was like, I'm going with this one and that's it. Like, but yeah, no, there's a lot of story and stuff to Ride the Lightning. Now, I don't know, there could be a lot more at Master of Puppets, but I would probably pick Ride the Lightning as my third.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great crack to play along to as well. Like I kind of base a lot of my favorite albums on how much fun I have playing along with the drums to them. So yeah, I'd probably pick that. And even Creeping Death itself, like when you play the live version of that, like it's so much faster, it's so much crack to play. So yeah, I'd have to say Ride the Lightning. The artwork is savage. I mean, the artwork for Puppets is class too, but no, I definitely stick with Ride the Lightning anyway. Mainly because it was first it was like the Black Album I checked out, then Kill 'Em All, and then it was Ride the Lightning. So yeah, I stick with Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, I remember like that was really a thing when we were teenagers as well. As all the lads who've been playing guitar for a while, Ride the Lightning was their favorite, and then like everyone who was learning to play it was Master of Puppets, like with a bullet. You know what I mean? There was always that contention, and then there'd be one or two of us in the corner. What about Kill 'Em All? Like, you know?
That's an album too, you prick.
I get a belt to hit it. My number 4. Number 4. We're repeating ourselves quite a lot because that it's one of those things that I had to note at the start of this one. The first 4 or 5, it's a juggle between them. Like, do you know what I mean? It's everything after now where I'd say our opinions are not our opinions, but our list would be a little bit different. But number 4 with the Bullet, listen to this album today for the first time in ages. It used to, when I was just getting into Metallica, it was my favorite for a long time, for a good year or so. Which is forever when you're like 16 years of age. But and Justice for All, man,
Yeah.
there's a weird element on that album, and I don't know how right it is in saying this, but like you mentioned when you were talking about and Justice for All earlier, there are elements like, where there's really quick tempo changes, and one song will be going from really, really aggressive to kind of really kind of more slow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like, I just can't think of a more appropriate word for this. It kind of seems a little bit progressive at times. Do you know what I mean? The closest Metallica ever got to doing any bit of prog, and I know anyone who's big into prog now was tutting their nose as soon as I say that. I just can't think of a better way to describe it. Jesus, looking at the set list for this, we've been talking about Cliff a good bit, like To Live Is To Die. That's the tribute the lads wrote for Cliff on that album. You got the classic one that's still on fucking any rock or metal television show that plays videos. It's always on at least once an hour. You got the title track in Justice for All, the opener Blackened, one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs, Harvester of Sorrow as well. Jesus H Christ, what a fucking track. And yeah, Dyer's Eve as well. It's just a fucking amazing album from back to front, and I think the only reason that it doesn't go any higher on my list now after all these years is do you know, this is going to be one of those other things. I know I said this years ago. I threw up, I shared this album on Facebook, and I got a load of shit off people for saying this. The production is really weird in this album compared to the first three. Do you know, listening to it now, having a bit of a more trained ear, like I studied music theory, or not music theory, but music production for 2 years. And it was around that time that I threw up that post about it. And it's just like, for me, like, the mix is just a bit weird, like, and it's nothing even to do with the bass or anything like that. It's like the drums sound really fucking like metallic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
like
no,
really
I
kind
get
of.
that.
Do you know what I mean? Like
The sound on the drums die off. They almost sound programmed or something. They die off straight away. And it's
yeah,
funny when you mentioned Dyer's Eve, Lars was actually accused of by multiple people of just looping the double bass pedals in it. Which it was back then. It was analog, like you had to cut and snip shit. Like,
yeah, that would have taken forever, like.
Yeah, so it was him. It was just, you probably jacked up and God knows how much coke, like.
Yeah, and do you know, like, from reading bits in like fanzines and stuff like that, and on fucking online articles over the past few weeks, when I had the idea to do this with you, one thing, like, they always talk about the drink with Metallica and stuff like that.
Yeah, alcoholic.
After that,
that was their nickname.
yeah, that was it. You can still, you know, you can't buy it officially, but you can still buy alcoholic merch out there, which I'm fucking that now actually. And shout out to fucking Ushin for his t-shirt, the one with Lars and Cliff. It should have been Lars on the front of it. I fucking love that t-shirt so much.
Yeah.
But from reading up on it and stuff, it's like, now I'm just gonna put my beer on the ground. So there we go. So from reading up and stuff like that, the lads in Metallica were fucking huge into fucking cocaine after the Aussie tour, which makes so much sense.
Would I be wrong or right in saying that James never really dabbled in drugs? He was just a big drinker. I think the rest of the boys are off their fucking head half the time.
Oh, yeah,
Kirk loved his LSD, but I think James was just a big, massive drinker.
Yeah.
I think you're wrong. But.
Yeah, like the only time I could imagine from just watching him in interviews and stuff like that, maybe around the time of Injustice for All after that and into the Black Album, because he was generally a little bit more prickish and stuff like that, even in interviews, you know. But I would attribute the issues that Lars is having now with, like, do you know the way he has, is it arthritis he has with his legs, that he has, he's used triggers now?
Yeah. He used to get like people to massage his legs after every show, and I think he gets daily therapy and everything because he was literally outdoing what his body could actually do. In fairness, they played at some speeds live. Even in the live Shit Binge and Purge, they did like a tribute to Cliff, and then they jumped into Creeping Death, and man, the speed that they played it on. Look, it's not necessarily a hard song to play on drums, but you can see Lars is wired to the moon.
Yeah. But I'd say that attributes it, because he was playing fast enough before they did that Aussie tour, and then after that, you watch footage of him live, His eyes are literally fucking bulging out of his head. The fucking legs are going 180 miles an hour. But as soon as you said that about him having to get his legs massaged, imagine being the poor fucker. Imagine you're there and you're like a 40-plus-year-old person. You're at a fucking mature party with people and all this shit. And someone's like, oh, so what's your career? And just like, oh, I'm a foot therapist. And like, oh, who have you worked for? And it's like, oh, I actually tour with Metallica. Do you know that little Danish elf that tours with them? Their drummer? Yeah, I rub his feet.
Yeah, I'll get into the two credits here. Oh, lads, should be
So
well.
what number are we on now? Sorry, I have to look at the list now. This is professionalism now on my part. 2 seconds. So that was number 4. My number 4 was Injustice for All. So what you was Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, that's your joint third. So what's your number 4 then?
Well, I put Puppets at 4, like, but here in my list, I have the Black Album down as 4. Because that's kind of like, and even like before when we kind of mentioned the idea, it was about a month ago, I think you messaged me first about it.
Yeah.
The Black Album wasn't even in my head, but I remember you texted me, you were like, man, I had so much fun revisiting the Black Album. I had the exact same. I was like, this is not a bad album by any degree at all. Like,
Yeah.
there's some great tracks in it.
I'm going to link in with you now because my next one is the Black Album. So rather than me just going on about it again in 5 minutes, we should just spitball about this for a minute or so. Like when we were talking about that the weekend, I really expected this album to be a lot lower because it was the album that we played to fucking death when we were getting into Metallica. And you know, it is one of those albums. I'm sorry now to cut across you and everything. I'll give the floor back to you in like 2 seconds. It wasn't until revisiting that where it's like, granted, it's never going to be up there in my top 3 or 4. It's staying there because it's like, you know, that's the end for me of like decent Metallica, like, do you know what I mean? But listening back to it, like, you know, I know there's the songs that are overplayed, like Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, shit like that. Jesus, though, like I'd have to pull out the list because I actually had to write down some of the names of the songs offhand, because it's been so long since I listened to it. Someone now is going to get really bad that I can't remember all the songs off the Black Album. It's not an album I particularly go back to that often, like so. But like, do you know what I mean? Like A Wolf and Man, Holier Than Thou as well is a fucking great song.
And
oh my
Don't
Christ.
Tread on Me. I particularly like Don't Tread on Me, but James came out in an interview and said he hated it, and that's why they never played it live. I was like, oh, fuck you, James.
And you know what's weird? They have nearly played like every song off that album at some point. And it's the one Metallica album they've done that with, because like there are songs off of the first 4 that to this day have never been played. They've never been played live. They went out of their way to do like when they had their own festival, I can't remember what it was called. They did it for like 2 or 3 years. It cost them loads of money. They lost money in the long run doing it. But they did a set list one day because they headlined both nights of it every time it would go on. And they played just songs that they hadn't played live before. Because I know they played Escape on one of those gigs and it was horrendous. It was really, really bad when they played it live.
Oh no. I'm just going to turn on the light.
Yeah, no bother.
Oh.
So sorry, I cut you off a small bit there. You talk away a bit more about the Black Album. But once you said it, I've got flashbacks to last weekend, and I was giddy sitting in that chair, like.
But the Black Album was a great one to revisit. Like, I genuinely had put out crack. Because like when I was working in Vodafone, like I'd be walking up and down from work, listening away to it, like, and I had it on in the car a few times. It had been early an album, like I remember you were talking to your dad on an episode of the podcast, and you were talking about albums that you'd nearly get people into metal with. If people had never listened to metal before, I'd definitely throw the Black Album at it.
Yeah,
because there's like it's not crazy either. Because I remember it's like showing like my little cousin Erin, when she was getting into metal. Now she's listening to loads and loads of different styles of stuff, like but she loves Injustice for All. Black Album was kind of the first one that I showed to her, like, and I found it was like a nice gradual progression up because there's nothing too insane on it either. Like, now considering the stuff that we listen to now, like, is in like the first 4 Metallica albums are pretty tame in comparison to some of the stuff that we've listened to lately. Like, but like again, like I had great fun playing along to them on the drums and everything. Holier Than Thou was some crack to play along to. Enter Sandman. Playing it live with a band, I found brilliant. Like when I played it with you guys back when we were 16, like that was actually some laugh. Like it was some crack. We did the Tool of Bond as well. That's actually coming back into my head.
Oh Jesus, yeah, fucking hell. I remember not being able to remember the words of that. I was like the one person in the band that didn't study French, and I just kind of like I remember the first few times we'd play that in rehearsals. I remember fucking Connor getting really bad at me for that because I used to keep saying Le Toulemont, and he was like, "It's fucking a Toulemont," like this to be like. I was just like, "All right."
It's like Phoebe trying to teach Joey French. Just talking gibberish.
I will say one thing about this album that anytime that I talk to someone over the age of 45 and they talk about Metallica and so, or they I meant if they're asking me about music, and you always would mention Metallica to someone of that age group, especially like if you can tell they're not a huge metalhead or whatever.
Yeah.
And I always get told that I missed them in the prime and shit like that and everything. But something, I would make the argument, as great as like live videos were of Metallica at this time around 1990 and stuff like that, the Injustice for All tour, that I think in hindsight would have been the tour to see. All the best
Oh,
stuff of the first
100%.
four albums, like a
Yeah.
nearly 3 hour set, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm nearly certain the headline Slain though after this album came out was either them or Guns N' Roses. It was a double thing at Slain in 1990 or
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah.
I remember myself and Ian when we went to the West County gym around that time, we would have been 16, 17. Uh, there was this lad one day, I was tying my shoelaces and stuff like this, and he was talking to myself and Ian about music and everything like this. Now, he was wearing a towel, mind, when we started talking to him and everything like this. And I turned around after tying my shoelaces, and your man is holding his towel basically in the air, stock bollock naked, right? He's fucking totally wet like this. There's poor Ian. Ian is just like, because we're 16, we don't know what to do in a situation like this. Do you tell the man to put his towel back on? What do you do? Like, this is
Ask him,
fucking.
does he want to have a sword fight?
And he's there and he's just going like, oh Jesus, boy, there was loads of us. We went up in the bus and he stacked up in Kansas cider, like we fucking went up and had a big oh, you missed the best fucking times, like, do you know what I mean? You missed the best fucking times. Metallica now, fuck it, like, do you know what I mean? You'll never see it as good. Now, he was right to a certain extent, but at the same time, romanticizing like mad. Is there any more notes you have on or any more notes or points to say about the Black Album before we move on to the next pick?
Well, I'd say fuck that old fella. I said there's loads of other bands that you'll see that are better than Metallica back then. I know, but like he is right in a way. Like looking at all those classic bands growing up, like that even reminded me of the story when myself and Jack were supposed to go to see Motorhead in England. And I remember
Oh,
he
no
rang me
way.
one night. He rang me and he just goes, and I thought he was messing because he sounded pissed and he was like, man, Lemmy's dead. And I was like, what? Lemmy's dead. I was like, fuck's sake. Oh man, it was just torture. Like, it was like fucking, I was so looking forward to seeing him, like, because I started like crossing bands off my list that I was going to go see, and then Lemmy died. Judas Priest are the next one. They are still one of my favorite bands ever, and I'm just waiting for Rob Halford to kick the bucket. Like,
Oh man, there's no fear of him. Simon Bloodstock there 3 years ago
yeah,
this year was fucking
yeah,
fantastic. Now the one
yeah,
thing I'll say is like, and this isn't even a criticism at all. It's definitely Halford's age. The fact that the man is able to sing Painkiller now at near 70 is
oh, yeah,
amazing. He
yeah,
did have to kneel and like press his diaphragm against the motorbike to do it, but that only makes sense. Like they did play for about 90 minutes as well. So it's well,
yeah. Mm.
I'll get in trouble now by one or two for saying this. There is rumours that domestic travel between us and the UK is going to be open by mid-July. I
Yeah.
would chance, if I were you, getting the flight over to Bloodstock. Do you know what I mean? If you've to
Oh, yeah.
isolate for 2 weeks,
Fair enough. Like, I
you
get to
know
see
you'll have
Prince.
seen him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because
Oh
it's
man,
one.
I missed a big opportunity to see them when I was living in New York as well. Judas Priest were playing with Diamond Head in a stay, or it was like an arena not too far away from me. And I remember I was supposed to go, and then I had to work, and there was no way I
Oh,
could pull out of it. Like, and I was absolutely bulling. Like, we were doing an evening shift, we were doing a fit out for an apartment, and I was bulling, absolutely bulling. And I said, I'm definitely going to see them when I go home. And just never got around to it. Like, just like 3 years ago now. Like,
yeah. And it's the sickening thing about COVID and everything. Like we obviously like have to stay home and everything to stop the spread of it and all that kind of crack. But people are there giving out, being like, "Oh, we've lost 2 years and whatever." We haven't really lost that much. We've lost about a year and a bit. We've lost about a year and 2 months. But it's mad to think you'd take for granted going to gigs and everything like that when you can't. Do you know what I mean? Um that was an episode I was going to do a few months ago. I decided not to do it for a finish. I'm going to wait now until I can actually be with people in a room and record this one. It's funny you even mentioned about gigs that we could have seen but didn't get a chance to see.
Yeah.
Motorhead were one of mine for sure. I've been thinking about gigs like that I missed over circumstance like mad. Not being able to see Motorhead was a fucking that was well. Dio was always the number one. Seeing Dio in any capacity, whether it was with the Heaven and Hell lineup when they started doing gigs just before he died, seeing Motorhead at any stage, seeing Dio like do his solo stuff live with Savage. Richie Blackmore is another one. I'm never going to get to see Richie Blackmore play live doing the Rainbow stuff, and it's not he's not dead or anything like that. It's just the lineup he has for that band now. He has like some weird, like I don't know what you call him, a session musician vocalist. They do a lot of the Jolene Turner stuff and not really like the Rainbow stuff I'd want to hear. So it's a bit of a pain. Just before we go on too, I can tell you exactly just that you mentioned it now about Lemmy passing. The next time that we're with Kira and anything like Kira now, for any of you listeners, my missus, ask her about the morning that we found out that Lemmy passed away, man. I want to say 19 years of age, and it was like two or 3 days after Christmas. And I was sitting inside in her sitting room. It was early in the morning. It was about 10 o'clock. And she came into me, and her face was kind of like pale. She was kind of nervous. And I was kind of like, what happened like this to her? And she goes, she was kind of like, have you talked to your dad? And I was like, no. And like, my granddad was still alive at this point. So I was like, fuck, has Mickey died like this? And she was like, no, Emmett, Lemmy passed away there this morning. And I thought, oh fuck, I'll tell you how bad I was about it, man. I had to go home to Tubbs. I went home to Tubbs that morning. Would have been around 11 or 12. And I remember we were chatting away with a cup of tea inside in the kitchen, because Dad's favorite band of all time was between Motorhead, Sabbath, and Purple. It was always one of the three.
Yeah.
And we were there. We weren't like overly like, we weren't crying or anything like this, but we were kind of like, fuck, because that would have been the gig that him and I should have seen together in hindsight. Should have been fucking Motorhead, but we never got a chance to. And I remember going down I had Christmas money now. I wasn't working at that stage. Well, I was working in Glore, but wasn't making that much. And I remember going down to Fine Wines, and I remember buying, I bought him 8 Becks. I bought 8 Dutch Gold because I was an absolute scumbag back then. And we bought a bottle of Jack Daniels, and we brought my vinyl player downstairs, man. I'm pretty certain, like, I didn't have any Motorhead vinyls at the time, but we played about 6 or 7 Motorhead records. I remember waking up the next morning and the sleeve for Overkill being underneath the kitchen chair, and I thought the record was inside it, and I was like, oh fuck. But I'm after going off in a mad tangent there. My apologies. I'm bad for this. If you haven't noticed this yet,
I was the catalyst. I started it.
But that's, I always, like, every time that we have one of these, I always go out of my way to mention that it's the whole purpose of this podcast is to recreate those like smoking area conversations at gigs. And it's shit that, you go on tangents when you're having those conversations. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're having 10 conversations at the same time. Like,
that's exactly it. Like, so I'm going to plow ahead. We're about halfway through now. We're on album number 6. This one now is probably going to surprise a few that it's this high up in the list. I have chosen number 6 as Death Magnetic. And the sole reason for this is this point of it, I was kind of teetering between this and Hardwired Self-Destruct. And this is going to sound really silly for a reason to put this as high as it is. The production on this, I just find way more truer to Metallica sound than the production on Hardwired Self-Destruct. And it does not sound anywhere near like the 4 albums or anything like that. But I think at this stage of the game and everything like this, I think it's the most decent Metallica album we're probably going to get. Because at this stage of it as well, a big thing to always consider when you're talking about Metallica, especially nowadays, is, they had the 90s when they kind of had, like, their kind of, I don't want to say midlife crisis in their 30s, but, like, where they were messing around with sound and stuff like that. But after the early 2000s and stuff like that, I don't think Metallica are one of those bands that, like, you mention to anyone and they know them. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not like it's not like Sabbath. You could mention Sabbath to people, they won't know who Sabbath is. But if you mention Ozzy, people know who Ozzy is. Metallica are bigger than the genre itself, nearly. Like, do you know what I mean? And the thing about it is they can't really take that many risks and be kind of too risky on albums anymore. Because like, you know, they could, in theory they could, because they've so much of a fan base, they get away with it and they could make up for it in the next album. But at the end of the day as well, I think if you'd been at Slane now, it was really apparent in this. There's a few curse words here and there, but Metallica are presented very, very much as a family-friendly band. And when you go to a Metallica gig nowadays, it's not like you're going to see like fucking, it's not like you're going to see like fucking Sabbath in the Three Arena or something like this. You're paying X amount of money because you're paying for production, you're paying for a day out. That's what it felt like. Do you know what I mean? And it's the reason I mentioned that is because Death Magnetic kind of feels like the last proper Metallica album, if that makes any sense. It's way better than Saint Anger was. It's way better than it's not way better, but it's steps better than Hardwired to Self-Destruct was and stuff like that. And a lot of people give out about the fact that Rick Rubin was the one who produced this. I actually don't mind. Like I mentioned, that was one of my favorite things about the album was the way that Rick Rubin actually produced it. A lot of people are very quick to dismiss Rick Rubin because, like, you know, he started Def Jam and everything like that, and he's more associated with hip hop artists and working with Johnny Cash. But the man's worked with like a serious amount of metal bands too. Like he produced a few Slayer albums in the 80s as well. I know he was the producer on the last Black Sabbath album, 13. I had a list written out with all of the metal bands that Rick Rubin has worked with that I just can't place now. But yeah, I need to actually get up the track list for this because it's not an album that I revisit all that often. It's an album that I actually only listened to for the first time in about 4 years for this. And it was when I was listening to it, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'd actually put it a bit higher than I would have before. The standout is for me on this album is always going to be All Nightmare Long. Cyanide off it, I think, is decent. The one song off this, I know a lot of people really like this song. I'm not a big fan of it, is the Unforgiven 3. I love Unforgiven 1 and 2. Unforgiven 3, I'm kind of like, I think they just kind of shoehorn it in. I think they shoehorn the Unforgiven title on it, but it doesn't feel in any way like the first or second parts of that Unforgiven trilogy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to say this now. I'm saying I'm a fan of this song. I'm not massive into the song. The last number on it, I think it's called My Apocalypse. I think that's a decent enough number as well.
No. In fact, I'd agree too, yeah.
That's it. But like I said, it's not an album I revisited that much when I got into the band. It's an album that I really just kind of had to listen to as part of this. And listening to it back when doing the research for it, I was like, you know, it's not that bad. But again, saying that, I'm probably not going to come back to it anytime soon, if that makes any sense.
I don't know, man. Like, and to be honest, Death Magnetic is in at my number 6 as well. Well, we'll say 5 because I had Master of Puppets Ride the Night and joined. But yeah, no, All Nightmare Long, a banger of a tune. In fairness, like for me, like Death Magnetic, it had great riffs, it had great ideas, and it had great songs. But I felt that I just found Lars's drumming to be so fucking shit at the time.
Yeah,
I remember watching a show of them doing Nothing Else Matters. It was actually a meme. So I saw it. He like missed 2 snare hits doing Nothing Else Matters. Now look, if you're playing in an underground band and maybe you're using the drum kit that the pub has, you're not used to the setup. This man is a multi-millionaire. It's his own personal thing. You should not be missing 2 snare hits for fucking Nothing Else Matters. He had really gone to the dogs, and like I kind of heard that across the album. Like, look, he still kept the beat, he still kept it going. But yeah, no, that's the only kind of downside I have for Death Magnetic. Like, I do agree. Like, I actually love the sound of it. That's the only reason I picked it over Hardwired, because Hardwired again for me was a little bit better on the musicianship. Mainly Lars, like James never really lost it, and Robert Trujillo is a fantastic bass player. Kirk Hammett, like, just wah, 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 like, but again, like, I think he's a great guitar player, but I think he's just way too heavily reliant on the wah pedal.
Yeah, his talent's wasted because of that to a degree, I think. Like, do you know what I mean? You see videos, even if you see videos of him like in studio, he's not playing with the wah pedal, he's playing on other people's guitars, and you're just sitting there and you're like, this man can still fucking play. Unreal. And like with different tones and stuff, he sounds so good, but it's just that fucking wah pedal. It's like, what are you doing? Like, do you know?
It's almost like he's trolling everyone. He's like, yeah, everyone hates it, so I'm gonna fucking keep doing it. He's pulling the ultimate Ushin on the like fucking troll everybody if you don't like it. But But even there's another great track off of Death Magnetic actually. It was actually Matt McCarthy got me to learn this one as we were jamming it out. It was The Day That Never Comes. It's
Oh
like their
fuck
modern
yeah,
day. It's like their modern day Fade to Black. It's the
yeah.
same structure. Um, like even the way the riff is played, like I learned it on guitar and like the opening riff, it's nearly the same kind of chords as Fade to Black. But it's just picked differently, and even the
Mm.
chorus and everything is very similar. And no, I think it's a banger. I had great crack learning that. It was a great song to jam. Um, but yeah, other than that, like yeah, like you were saying, like My Apocalypse is okay. You'd give it like maybe a 6 out of 10. Because
Oh,
again,
not
there was
even, not even. No, I'd
420.
be. If like, let's say no, let's say if the album was its own type of thing, and I was rating songs in the album out of 10 and not comparing them to everything else, I'd put it up there. I'd put it above. I'd put it above a 5. But yeah, it's you know, I'm sorry, I'm cutting across you again, small, but
No,
it's
not at all.
just you listen to a song like that, and it's just like it's like the narrative of that album is like there's so many points where like this could be great, this could be better, this could be fucking
Yeah,
brilliant. It just
yeah,
didn't fucking come together for whatever reason. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Do you want to belt ahead with your next one? What are we at now?
Um, 7.
Number 7, perfect. What's your number 7?
This one I actually might shock a few, but I was kind of disassociating it with being Metallica earlier, but it's actually Load.
That's
Yeah,
gas.
just because of like I really, really enjoyed a few of the songs that were on it. And
Yeah.
like I really took on board one fella like said, like if you don't look at it as a Metallica album, but look at it as more of a hard rock album. I really enjoyed some of the songs on it, like Ain't My Bitch, 2x4. I think they're the opening 2 tracks as well. Let's see if there it is.
Yeah.
King Nothing is on it as well. There's some really cool riffs in it, like, and as a hard rock album, like it is quite good. And even when they did the S&M, the orchestral stuff was in like '99. They did
Mm.
the Outlaw Torn and Bleeding Me. Those songs were powerful as fuck live.
Yeah.
Like they were very good, and it actually made like I think the studio ones are a bit shite, but um, no, when they did them live, they were fantastic. Like but other than that, like yeah, the other I picked it over Hardwired because I do agree as well. Like Hardwired, when I was listening to it, I was like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like Metallica. It
Mm.
didn't, you know, I thought it was good. There was good ideas, but again, it's just there was a weird feeling about it. And then they went out, they did Moth into Flame with Lady Gaga, and I was like, what the fuck are you
Oh,
doing?
that was fucking horrendous. That was Jesus Christ, the lack of self awareness on their part to do that.
Yeah.
Like nothing against Lady Gaga or anything like that, but man, it was
No, no,
so
no.
tacky. Do you know what I mean? Her
Yeah, yeah.
dancers in the background, they were literally Metallica were more or less stage props in that. Like, do you know what I mean?
Pretty
It
much,
was,
pretty much. It was centered around her. Like, it's like,
yeah.
do you imagine Dave Mustaine, Megadeth went up there, Ariana Grande, and fucking something like, for fuck's sake. Like, yeah, no, it was a bit shit. And I actually remember watching the live performance of that. And James, I think it was the practice run, but James was losing his shit. He still has a bad temper because his
Mm.
mic wasn't coming through and they couldn't hear him. So he just like slapped the mic out of the way and just stormed off.
Sure, he fucked the guitar off stage at a stagehand at that performance when they played live. He literally, I think, like, nothing came through bad on our end except how it fucking looked anyway. But he literally, you can find it. It's handheld footage, I think, because I don't think it was picked up on the actual hard cam of it. And I'm nearly certain he's playing like a what? I'm not too fucking clued in on what guitar he was playing, but he just fucking underhand swung it like this. And you know, you can really tell he's a bad temper because their whole road crew and everything like that, the tour at Metallica, they're all apparently really close to the band and shit like that. Which says a lot now that he'd fucked the guitar at one of them, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it blows my mind that you picked Load for this one above
Yeah.
Hardwired, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because I actually fucking picked Reload for my next one. Uh, and I went into it with exactly the same mindset as you. I was like, right, if this wasn't Metallica and let's say it was some 90s hard rock band, how would I view it? And literally the only reason I picked this above Load and above Hardwired was there's a few of these songs, and weirdly enough, like you mentioned, I loved that fucking S&M album when I was a
Yeah,
teenager. The version
yeah.
of The Memory Remains off of that,
Oh,
brilliant.
the memory remains.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's that. There's
yeah,
a few songs that are on this album, and I think it's S&M influenced me picking this over Load.
yeah,
With Reload, you got like, you know, you got Fuel, everyone knows that. You got The Memory
yeah,
Remains, Devil's Dance. that on the S&M version is fucking incredible.
Yeah,
The like
it
the
is.
stringed bit, never. Do you know where the bass is going like doom dum boom boom boom
Yeah,
boom rather than the
and then I
guitar
think the cello. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
rather than the guitar going,
Oh.
it's just like the cello's going like this, and it's just it's fucking. I haven't stuck that on in so long. I'm gonna actually stick that on this evening after we wrap this up. But the latter half of the album, I'm not too mad on the closing track Fixer. I fucking hate. Low Man's Lyric, not a fan of that. Prince Jarman too. It's just like not a fan of that. It's just side A definitely stronger than side B on this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%.
I think the thing is with load and reload and everything like that. Um, do you know our mate now Chris made a great point about Metallica there actually a few weeks ago that I'm going to mention on this. The fact that we have to think of these two albums as being played by another band to be able to pick the good and bad parts of it says a lot. Says a lot about the way that we view them and stuff like that. The Unforgiven too. Love that song. I think it's a
Yeah,
fucking brilliant song.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I just find it's so weird that you know 11 years before this the band were playing Master of Puppets, and then
I
the
know.
thing the thing with this album man is it's just I say this quite a lot in the podcast I give out about people not having lack of self-awareness. It's my favorite term of 2021. But it's like, you're the biggest metal band in the world. It's one thing if you cut your hair and everything like this. It's Load that Mama Said is on, I think. And the video for that, James Hetfield on train tracks in a fucking cowboy hat and a denim jacket.
Yeah.
Like, whatever about the song, him doing that, I'm like, come on to fuck. And he's not old there. And you know what another thing is too? You could make
Uh,
the argument that Metallica were trying to cash in on Garth Brooks' success at this point. Garth Brooks was huge at
oh,
that stage. Do you know what I mean? They could have been
yeah.
trying to like fucking lure over a few country fans with that. Like,
But like that was the name of the game, I think, at that stage was just money.
yeah, trying to
Just
get the
fucking
audience
money.
scope as big as they could, and it worked with them. It worked for them. In fairness, like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
kind of like, yeah, yeah,
I think the thing
100%.
that really well in their favor was after they did those two albums and before they did S&M when they did Garage Inc. as well. I think that won back a lot of fans as well that were thrown
Yeah,
off with Load and Reload. But it was one of those things as well. It was kind of because they covered so many big artists on that one as well.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was and they promoted that as if it was an original LP as well. Like
yeah,
they did Stone Cold Crazy by Queen and stuff like that. And there was a few videos for some of those songs, like the video Whiskey in the Jar that did cover that one as well. Um, but yeah, I'm going on a tangent again. Weird period for the band. Really, really weird period for the
yeah.
band.
Big time, like
And
I don't know where you get that from, like, because even I remember, like in the late '90s, Creator went on a similar kind of a route. They went kind of industrial or something. There was a
mm,
weird sound with them, but they still never really lost. The same with Sodom and stuff like that. Like, and
yeah,
like they kept it consistent. Metallica, like it was one reason why I lost a lot of respect for them is because like you could tell clear as day they were cashing in, and that
yeah.
was that. You know, like and yeah, it was just it was a load of shite.
But the thing as well to always think about that is like, we always, but when we were younger and stuff, we always give out about bands and out and all that kind of crack.
Yeah,
If you were, your late 20s, early 30s, and you were in the position that Metallica were in 1990, or let's say 93, when they came off, was it 93 or 94 they came off the tour for the Black Album? They were walking into showers with women waiting for them in the showers. Anything they wanted, they could afford. They were selling over like fucking over 100,000 copies of the album a week. The album still sells apparently in excess of 1 million a year, which in this day and age especially says a lot about it. Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
big
Nirvana's
time.
Nevermind does the same figures as that,
Yeah,
So in
yeah,
their
yeah,
mind, it was
big
probably
time.
like if we go and re-release like a proper metal album like we have done the last few years, we're going to alienate that audience we're after building, and we're going to cost ourselves in the long run. So it makes kind of sense why they would do it too. Like, do you know what I mean? It's easy for us to give out, 20, 30
Yeah,
years later after these albums came out about like, it is one thing in hindsight when we were 16 and we'd be giving out about like fucking Metallica making albums like Load and Reload, and the albums came out before we were born. Like, do you know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, I think Load came out the year I was born, and Reload came out 2 years later. Like it was '95. Load came out, and then Reload came out in '97 or something.
Yeah.
So you had to be like giving out about it, and all we were is little fucking sperm. Like, but no, like you said, look, musically, I don't think that the albums are bad. There is honestly
No,
some
they're not.
shite
They're not
songs in
bad
it,
at all.
but
They're just not good Metallica albums.
no, exactly. There was actually people suggesting that they should have released the albums under a different name, but again, like that just kind of raises the question, like what the fuck are you doing, like kind of business, like. Because I have a note written here as well, and this one now will probably stir a few pots. I must have been angry when I wrote this point. It was like, are they even that good? It was like, after Mustaine left and Cliff died, it went downhill in terms of writing, bar a few riffs. I don't know where that came from. That is literally word for word what I've written down. Um, but yeah, like, because even when you look at it, like up until like Master of Puppets, they had Mustaine still. I think even in Injustice, they had Mustaine's name in some of the song credits.
Jesus,
Um,
I didn't know that.
I think it was definitely up to Master of Puppets anyway for
Yeah,
some of the solos and stuff, but you could even hear it in some of the solos that were written, especially for Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. Like you can hear that it's Dave Mustaine solos, like because like he kind of just freehand did it, like he wasn't technically trained, he just kind of learned himself, and you can hear it. Like, do you remember the Cemetery Gates, the Pantera thing? He came out to do the solo and he made an absolute buzz. But again, it's me sitting here like you fucking barely play a Wonderwall and guitar and stuff. Uh, but but yeah, no, I don't know. I could be wrong with that point, but like we were kind of talking about the commercialism about it as well. Like with Load and Reload, like there was lots of women in the showers. They were on the up.
yeah. They're
Um,
making serious money, like, do you know what I mean? If you're selling
oh,
100,000 copies a week, overheads
yeah,
aside, you're still making 1 or 2 million every 2 weeks, like, do you know what I mean? That's
yeah,
serious, serious
100%.
money, like.
Yeah. So you kind of like go with the gradient, really. I think that's what they did. And look, you can't really bash them that much because there were still some great tunes off of all the albums. Like, well, until you get to certain ones.
It does beg the question, would it have been better if it was just a single LP with the better songs taken? Like
Yeah,
they may
yeah.
have rushed it to make it a double or to make it a double album. Do you know?
Mm.
That could have been
'Cause
that could have been a gimmick, like.
there was a lot of tracks on both of those albums, wasn't there?
Yeah,
In
I think
comparison to the
both
rest of
both
them.
have about 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah, they were
Um,
pretty long albums in comparison to the rest of their albums, stuff like that.
yeah. I have an awful feeling that we're going to have the same one for the next one.
Go on.
Just reminded me of Matt now when he'd just be going, I think I might.
What have you done to me? For let me roar and laughing inside the kitchen. Lads, what have you done to me? Oh,
Gas
nice.
fucker, man. Yeah, number 8, I went with Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I put it slightly above Load, but just by a margin. The song strength as a whole on the album is not there. It is
Mm,
one of those things that all of us, and we've touched on this a few times already throughout this episode of the podcast, we all had the initial reaction of like, oh, this is the best thing Metallica have done in ages. And
mm.
the proof in the pudding with any album, whether it's going to be good or not, is how you find it after re-listening and stuff like that. And more importantly, over time, after you come back to it about a year or so, like we're all very quick to put up a post in December being like, this is my favorite album of the year. But a big thing then when you look back on Facebook memories and you see some of those albums that you've shared like over the years, because I've done this once or twice. When I get it's normally around the 29th of December where you get like, you know, your Facebook memories come up and I click into it and I'll see that I've shared 1 or 2 albums and I'll say these are my favorite albums of the year. And I come back to them, then listen to them and I'm like, you know something? I never really came back to them, you know, a year or so after it. So were they as
Yeah.
good? Last year's one now, I put down Metallica Patton for last year's one. I still come back to that once a week. But I think that was the thing with Hardwired. It was one of those things where, like, you know, I heard the album before it came out by chance. Someone threw it up on YouTube 2 days before it came out. And because I think I wanted to like it more than I actually did, like, you know what I mean? I really, really wanted to enjoy
Yeah.
it. When A Moth Into the Flame came out, I was kind of like, oh, this is pretty decent. And you know what? I still don't think that's a bad song.
Yeah.
The first half of this album is fucking unreal. Like, for, you know, I'm not going to say it's unreal, actually. That was a bit too strong, but it's solid. It's really solid, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense. Like, you know, it's really, really listenable. You got that title track Hardwired,
Mm.
and they opened with that on that tour, actually, which was pretty cool. The they did the intro thing where the do do do, or no, that's Man to the Flame Hardwired, the diddle 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 that intro thing,
Yeah.
and the fucking, you'd have loved this now if you'd seen it. They had two inflatable balls to the side of each side of the stage. And for some reason, it was a collage of all their faces from the cover of that album. You know, the way they're all melted together. But on
Yeah.
the side we could all see, it was just Lars's face superimposed and stretched out. And
Of
it just
course, it
like,
had to be Lars.
yeah, but it just inflated like mad and then just popped. But yeah, it was one of those things. This is a long album too. This is a really, really long album. I think it's only out over an hour 10. They released a music video for every song of this album too. I remember that was a handy way to kind of get people to be listening to the songs a lot, but just before
Mm.
they came out. They did Murder One about Lemmy. Solid, solid song.
Yeah.
Don't really think it was written about Lemmy though. I think it was a song that they had written, and then after Lemmy passed away, then when they were putting out the video, they were like, "Oh, this would actually work if we did a tribute video for Lemmy in it." And the video is actually
Yeah.
pretty good. I enjoyed it a bit.
Mm.
But yeah, side A, a lot stronger than side B. Like I was mentioning a few minutes ago, I got Matt into the Flame, Now That We're Dead, Atlas Rise, Hardwired. Man Unkind is a solid one too. But
Yeah.
it is one of those things. When I first listened to it, really, really enjoyed it like mad. And in the time that's gone on, like I listened to it for the first time since 2017. This past week, like researching stuff and ranking for this episode and everything like that. Um, it does big. It leaves me wondering what they're like. It leaves me wondering, thinking, uh, will we be waiting fucking nearly 10 years for another Metallica album? I'm kind of thinking that's going to be the way it is, where they're just going to milk it for as long as possible. And regardless of what they put out, because the wait will be so long, unless they don't do a mad drastic change like they did in the 90s, I think people will still be pretty content with it. It's not a shit album at all, though. Like, honestly, I wouldn't.
No.
And it's obvious because I have it this kind of low on the list and everything like that. It's obviously nowhere near top tier Metallica, but it's definitely not shit. It is one of those albums that if like you were mentioning with the Black Album, if I knew someone that was into like radio rock now and they wanted to get into it to metal, I'd give them that album. That
Yeah.
would be a pretty easy listening metal album for someone that isn't
Yeah.
familiar with the genre. If I was
Yeah.
talking to someone and they wanted to know more about Metallica, I wouldn't be quick to show them this one. So,
No, I'd agree.
what's your next one on your list, sir?
Reload is my next one. I actually have it just above Hardwired, and I actually thought about the two of them for a while. And to be honest, I was going to put Reload where Load was, but Load was kind of one of the first of those two albums that kind of won my favor a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, Reload, like you were saying, like Memory Remains, Fuel, all those tunes that are on it, like are absolutely fantastic. Like and great with the S&M. But then, like you were saying, side A is a lot stronger than side B. Side B, yeah, it is weak. What was that last song you were saying that was on it? Fixer.
Fixer, yeah, and they spell it with three X's.
It's erotic porn. But yeah, like I have nothing much else to add about Reload really. I hadn't much written out on it as anyway. You know, I enjoy going back to it, but like it's generally like the Memory Remains tune, and The Unforgiven, obviously, like it's such a good tune. Like as in
Yeah,
that one and the first one are banging. And I do agree as well, the third one is kind of shit. I think even Dave Mustaine said it before when he listened to that album, that he said that The Unforgiven was the only song that he took off that was any good.
yeah.
Um, but like it is a belter of a tune. But yeah, I'm afraid I haven't much more to add for Reload for that. Um,
That
but
is the thing. That is the thing when I go on these tangents. That's why if I'm ever going on one, you have to be like, "Sir, give me a chance," because I'll fucking talk for Ireland if I get the chance to.
you're using your white privilege. I'm going to get into trouble for that one. Um, musical privilege. Um, but yeah, no, Reload. I do enjoy going back to it. To be honest, it was. I think I listened to it like 2 weeks ago. I didn't actually get to listen to it again before we came on. But yeah, no, I had great crack with the tunes. I do honestly prefer the orchestral versions of them, but I do prefer live music to studio music anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I do love this. Like, I love the energy you get off of live music. It's just like, yeah.
A lot of people like shit all over that album, like the S&M album, because of the symphonic infusion on it. People like label it as gimmicky and stuff like that. I couldn't give a fuck. It sounds brilliant. There's plenty of metal
Yeah,
bands who use like symphonic and orchestral elements in their music, and it is pure gimmicky. Like
yeah,
Jesus Christ, like I know, like anytime you criticize the band, you're going to get shit for it anyway. Dimmu Borgir is a great example of that. Um,
mm,
Dimmu Borgir is a band that like they kind of shoehorn it in there. It doesn't really work for me like at all. And like, you know, black metal in essence, like, you know, from its inception is not really a genre of music that kind of works with. Some bands have done that now and it kind of works to a degree. I'm not really a fan of it. And it's, you know, it's kind of, there are sometimes it works when it complements it, but when it's right there at the forefront, it doesn't. In this case, though, with S&M, it complements the songs more than anything. And it's a point that both of us have made throughout the podcast now when talking about some of the songs off a load. So when they're on load, they're fine. When they're on S&M, it gives them a whole new fucking life to them. Like
yeah,
Memory
yeah,
Remains, Devil Dance, they're great examples of that, like, do you know what I mean? And it is
yeah,
one of those ones I know a lot of people are quick to dismiss that album and not even listen to it because of the orchestral kind of elements in it.
mm,
I know both of us now would probably say to anyone who hasn't given that album a chance, get out there and pick it up. Or let's throw it on
yeah,
Spotify. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, big time.
that's it. I am on to second now, and I get up my old list. I am on to number 9. My number 9 is Load. Um, yeah, to be honest with you, I'm in a similar boat now, like you were with Reload. There's nothing I can say about this album that you haven't already said. And that's me being totally honest now. Um, it's my least favorite out of Load and Reload. Um, it's honestly like picking hairs. There isn't much of a margin between them for me. Like literally, the songs that I prefer on side A of Reload, they're just my favorite songs out of the two albums, and it's why I took
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um, I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at the track list now. Hero of the Day is a grand song. I enjoy that one. I really like that.
yeah,
I loved it when I was a teenager, and I still like it now.
yeah,
Thorn Within, uh, that's probably the only other one now. King Nothing is yeah, King Nothing is solid as well. But that'd be about it. That'd be about it on
yeah,
that album for me. It was one that I consciously stayed away from as a teen. Gave that and Reload a chance as I got a little bit older. Um, when I say a little bit older now, I'd say I'm like fucking 17, 18. So the year after I got into Metallica, like, but yeah, I know we mentioned it a few minutes ago. It is one of those cases where it's like, do you know something? If they took half the songs off of both albums, released it as one
Put it
album,
into one.
people mightn't look back at it as dismissively, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no,
So
100%.
I'm gonna let you belt on with the next one now because I think we're close to number 10 now.
Yeah, boy. My next one is Hardwired then. After all that, put it below Reload, just for the simple fact, um, again, like I was saying it before, it just didn't feel like I was listening to Metallica. There was a few elements of it, yeah. Um, Now That We're Dead, actually, that was Undertaker's tune when he came out to fight AJ Styles.
Yeah,
Um,
it came out in the
that
motorbike to them.
Yeah, that made me love that song just for the simple fact that he made it look badass, and it was badass cake. But yeah, no, there was great tunes on it, and again, like it reminded me a lot of like that Magnetic in the way that there was great ideas and stuff like that, and it was a bit musically better. Well, it was from a drum stand point of view. Lars was a bit better. James for me, he's always written great riffs. He's a savage rhythm guitar player. Um, like that Moth into Flame, great tune. Hardwires itself is a great tune. Atlas Rise, I actually enjoyed listening to that as well.
Yeah, I like that
Um,
song.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. And what was the one with the video? Oh, there was the music video. It was like a post-apocalyptic thing.
Oh
Um,
Jesus.
oh, there was like this weird, like one-eyed thing, like flying in the middle of the video, and it was shooting them and shit. It was like a Mad Max. It was like a terrible remake of Mad Max for all intents and purposes. Um, Which I know I had a good old time listening to it and everything, but like to be honest, like my style that I listen to now, like I listen to a lot of traditional heavy metal stuff, and more black metal and stuff like that, death metal. Like I'd listen to like Destroyer 666, Riot City, Avenger, and Hell Ripper would be like the bands that I kind of go to now, like as in
Yeah.
going back to that. I kind of feel like if it was me listening to it 10 years ago, fair enough, yeah, I would have loved it. But not me now, no. I just kind of listen to a lot of different more styles, like Ambush, and Early Sodom Creator, and stuff like that. Like I love all those bands. Like I've kind of weaned off the trash. And I remember me and you when we were like 17, 18, having arguments about punk and trash and stuff like that. I was die hard trash, like trash is so much better. You were like, fuck you, man, punk is so much better. And like looking back on it now, it's like, oh yeah, I can't stand up for trash anymore.
Do you know it's not so much that I had an issue with thrash. It was like, and I actually stopped looking for new metal, like for new metal spelled NEW, not NU metal for anyone getting worried out there. I stopped looking for new metal bands for a while
He
over
loves
that.
Linkin Park.
I don't. But I have to clarify that because someone will think I'm serious now and they'll have me fucking cancelled. But you remember that trend of bands that was happening? In retrospect, now I know it happened between like the late 2010s into the late 2000s into the 2010s. It was like the new wave of thrash was happening. It was bands like Evil and stuff like that. And you know, some of those early albums and stuff by some of those bands are great. A lot of those bands you see footage of them live and they were tight as fuck. But the
Yeah,
fucking thing that really annoyed me about that whole scene was a lot of bands were very copy paste and stuff like that. And
yeah,
that was the way that was the way I was viewing thrash for a while then at that age too.
yeah,
Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and at the benefit of hindsight, it kind of like it was kind of the best thing I ever did because when I say it's kind of ironic now because I was like when Jack was getting me back into metal, it was only a couple of months that I wasn't looking for new metal, or I was still listening to what I listened to before and stuff like that. But I remember Jack got me back on the horse by getting me into the first two Venom albums, Hellhammer and Battery. But the biggest bit of irony now in all this, right, was I was saying, "Oh, I don't want to listen to thrash anymore or anything like this." At that time was when I got fucking massive into early Sodom and early Creator,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
just
Wow, so,
caught myself right in the foot there, like, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
But I tell you one thing before we leave the Hardwired album was I remember going into Dave Woodford and the record rack, God rest his soul, when that album came out, and I remember trying to get a rise of him because he was very very fair with the way he priced albums. Now, in fairness to him,
yeah.
but when Hardwired came out, there was two versions you could buy. In these standard versions now, not these super deluxe fucking €200 things where you get like a button and a balloon or something. But there was this
Oh, definitely.
there was the regular digipack CD, which was still expensive. It was still 16, 17 quid. But you know, if you wanted the album, you'd pay the same on Amazon to get it delivered. But there was this other version of it, and it's on Spotify. And the fucking CD of it cost 40 quid. Now, I'm telling you this for a fact now. The only difference between that version of the album and the standard one for 16 was that there was a live CD on the back of it, or like on the second disc, right? And the live CD it's a full show and everything like that. But it just shows the greediness of Metallica's management's part. They thought, oh, an extra CD, we can slap an extra €24 on that, like, do you know what I mean? And you listen back to it, and oh, sweet Christ, like if I'd seen it live, I'd have enjoyed it more. When you listen to the live CD that comes with that version of Hardwire, just kind of like, I'd hate to be one of the lads who bought it. I'll just say that much. If
Yeah,
I paid
yeah,
40
yeah.
fucking euro for a CD and then listen to that live bonus disc, I'd be like, what the fuck was that? Um,
Oh, stuff.
we are teetering towards the end of the pile now. Do you want to throw out any honorable mentions or dishonorable mentions before we get to rock bottom?
Oh, well, I've only got two left.
Oh yeah. Sorry, you go on. You have more than I do. Go ahead.
Um, my next on the list is Saint Anger. That's my second last. Um, oh, just muck. I think it was actually my old guitar teacher. Remember Graham Keane?
Yeah,
He made a claim before that Saint Anger was Metallica trying to be like System of a Down or those kind of bands
yeah.
that were out of time that were quite popular,
You
and
can
they
hear
did it
that for
quite
sure on that
poorly.
album.
Yeah. Um, I did not enjoy listening to it. I remember listening to it for the first time, and I was like, and then I listened to it again, and it just got worse and worse and worse. Like, but there was never ever like a ooh. It was always like a eh.
Yeah.
And Yeah, you know, like I love listening to albums. I don't give a shit about production quality or what it sounds like. If the music is good and it sounds good, that's fucking fine by me.
Because you
But
can
say
overlook it
Danger,
then, like, do you know what I mean? You can
yeah,
get
yeah,
past production being bad if the songs are there, like.
yeah. Sure, one of my favorite albums, like, is "Endless Pain" by Creator, and that sounds like wank, but in terms of quality, but it's such a good album, like. Um, but yeah, saying Danger, like, I don't know what they were doing, why they thought that that was good to release. No guitar solos, no nothing. It was just straight up drum beats. It was very basic riffs, and you had Robert Trujillo coming into the band, and I was like thinking to myself, what the hell was that poor fucker thinking? He was given like £1 million to join Metallica. This off the wall good guitar or bass player, like he's played with numerous big names and everything, to come into Metallica first album to be saying Anchor. The poor fucker was probably like doing this little crab walk across the stage, like I need to fucking get out.
I'll tell you this thing for Rob now. Fairness to him, to the best of my knowledge, he had absolutely zero contribution to the
Oh,
writing
thank
of
God.
that album. Thank fuck, because I could imagine he seems to be a bit of a perfectionist. Because I adamant about this. He seems to actually be the most talented musician in Metallica. Like he's a
Yeah,
multi instrumentalist and everything like that.
yeah.
Like he's classically trained and everything like that as well. Um, you can hear his influence a little bit on Death Magnetic at times. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, big
Like
time.
if they had kept
Big
going
time.
and the thing is with Saint Anger, and I'm going to join you on this one because that was my next album. Now was Saint Anger as well. Is like we both watched some kind of monster documentary. It's a band that's all over the place at that stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
You can hear that as well, you know.
that's it, and like I know the original title was due to be Frantic, and there is an element of that to the album where there's just a really weird sense of urgency, and the urgency isn't good. It's like
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
it kind of sounds someone listening now as I'm saying is going to think that I'm full of shit describing it the way I do, or the way that I'm about to. It kind of sounds like they're like we need to do something, but we're not too sure what we've to do, and
Yeah,
even with the you know there was no they were going in to make it album because they had to make it album. You look back at that footage, um most times bands go into studios to make albums and everything like that. They know they have the kind of stuff ready to go, and they might work out some bits in the studio, but the album is essentially written. You know what I mean?
yeah,
They
yeah.
were walking in there with no songs written or anything like that. They had their own studio, so it didn't cost too much from or anything like that. But it kind of sounds like they just threw stuff at the wall and kind of was hoping stuff would stick.
Mm,
That's the impression I
yeah,
get every time I hear
yeah,
I hear it, and that's why it's rock bottom for me. Like,
yeah. Like for me, like what I felt with the album was, yeah, like that. They just went in and just wrote the fucking riffs, and that was it. There was no, like, James wasn't sitting at home writing multiple riffs or putting stuff together, like bridging the verse and the chorus. It was like, yeah, we're just going to go in and fuck out whatever happens. Um, like even when you like listen to like just the guitars by itself, like because I like jammed along to some kind of monster actually, and even Frantic as well. It just sounds like what you kind of right when you were 17, 18 starting off.
yeah,
That's kind of like a bonus material you should be hearing from fucking, well, okay, I can't say Kill 'Em All because there's nothing like it. But you know, when they were starting off as a band first, like
yeah.
stuff that you hear, like, oh, this was like riffs and stuff that I just literally thought up of on the spot. But no, this is their fully fleshed out album that they released. Like, Jesus Christ, even the tune we did down at the age of 16 was fucking better than half the shit hearing on that album. Like, at least we had structure and there was a guitar solo. But
I'll tell you a great line in a review I read about that album doing the research for this, and I think it sums up the whole album perfectly. Uh, the fella who wrote it was going on about James getting sober at the time and everything is, and he goes to sum up Saint Anger in one sentence: the worst hangover ever.
and that is a fact. That whole album. Do you listen to that when you're hungover anyway, and when the fear would just grip you and kill you?
Oh Jesus, yeah. Like the cover is like a fucking visual representation of the fear too. Like it's
It's just
so
like,
shit. Like, do you know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
someone on Instagram I saw there a few weeks ago did like a hand painted version of it, and there was people saying, "Oh, it would have been way better if it was like this." It's like no.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
Like if it,
just
do you
put
know,
it to bed and keep it in there and good luck.
that's it. Like, do you know,
Yeah.
I was going to throw. I didn't throw this one on my list. I know it's your last one. I didn't throw it on the list because it's not down as a Metallica, or it is down as a Metallica album. But one of my all-time favorite artists is on this album. We're talking a little bit about Lulu. I'll let you talk about it first because this is one. If I start, I'm gonna try not to talk about this album because if I start, I'll fucking go for fucking hours.
Yeah, it's only 10:15 now. We got enough time. um, to be honest, man, I couldn't actually put myself through listening to it. I listened to a couple of tracks off it, and then I just started kind of skipping through and kind of listening to the different riffs and the different sections. There's actually some cool bits that are in it. It almost again like touches on that kind of proggy nature. There's a few like different drum solos and
Yeah,
stuff that Lars attempts to do. Again, like there's ideas there. Like at the end of the day, Metallica are Metallica. Like they're fucking fantastic writers. But I don't know what they were going for with Lulu. I really don't. Like there was this on Brandenburg Gate. I remember listening to that, and I was just staring at the wall. I was actually out at my parents' house and I was just staring at the wall in the conservatory and with the two dogs in my lap. My mom was like, "The fuck is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I actually don't know." I couldn't piece it together. I was like, who like came up with it? Was it Rick Rubin did that as well, or am I wrong?
I did not look into it enough to know. I don't know who produced that one. I would not be surprised if Rick Rubin produced it, considering that it was Lou Reed and Metallica. Though that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But that
Um
it's
like
such a
listen, I get the
clusterfuck.
precipice. It could have been great. Like Lou
Mm.
Reed's a fucking legend. But like
It's do you know there's a weird part in that album. There's a weird part where it's like when you're, you know, when they're working with Lou Reed, right? You would think maybe now is the time you slow it down. There's a riff on that album that is the fucking trashiest thing Metallica have done since 19 fucking 89. And I'm like, why did you wait until now to use that? Why did you wait until you were with a fucking 70-year-old man to use that fucking riff? Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And the
Oh,
killer about
so
this, man, is like Lou Reed, a legend, a legendary songwriter, has absolutely fucking 101 fantastic albums by them. Transformer is one of the all-time best recorded LPs. That's not me saying that as opinion. It's regularly in like people's top tens and stuff. It's just a really, really celebrated album. Everyone knows the songs like Perfect Day and Take a Walk on the Wild Side. And it's like, you know, I wasn't a big fan of Lou Reed around the time this album would have came out. I wouldn't have been consciously really listening to music in 2011. Like I would have only been
yeah, yeah.
easy, like 12, 13, you know. But after, like, for years, I'd heard people giving out about the album and everything like that. And you know, I got into Lou Reed when I was probably about 16, 17 years of age. And at around 18 or 19, I was like, you know something, I'm going to give this album a listen. Very similar to what happened to yourself. I got through one or two songs. I was like, no, can't do this.
Mm.
I sat myself down when I was in America, when I was living in America, and I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and listen to this album. And I used to be the janitor in the summer camp I was working at. So I used to go around with the Colombian fella in a golf cart, and we would go from one bathroom to another cleaning it. And
Yeah.
I remember like I played the album because he would always be playing like 90s Metallica and like Black Album Metallica and stuff like that. But I couldn't play metal around because he didn't like the metal I'd be playing, like, you know. And there was a language barrier too. So he'd just get really angry and start thumping the golf cart. So I'd just be like, right, fuck it. And so I was like, I can get away with playing this. I can get away with listening to this during my shift now. And I won't be inclined to turn it off because I can't turn on anything else. We'd no Wi-Fi, so I'd have to actually download the album to listen to it. And I even remember him just turning around. My nickname, we had to have nicknames at camp because the kids that we were working with didn't want them to know our real names or anything like that. So my nickname was Charms because like the Lucky Charms cereal, and I was Irish. And I remember him turning around about halfway through the album when we were literally hosing down toilets full of like fucking diarrhea, like. And he even turned around to me. And bear in mind, this fella had fuck all English. And he goes, Charms, what the fuck? Like this to me. And I was like, that's a testament to how bad it is. If the poor fucker could have understood some of the lyrics on the album, man,
Yeah.
I was listening to it again yesterday, trying to see if I could salvage any good from it. Like I was sitting in my bed, food coma after my dinner, like, and oh man, do you know something? I'm not going to think of it offhand now, but I remember actually bursting out laughing at the line. It was like, oh god, it was something along the lines of like him saying that like, oh, he wished he was a gay man or a black man. He wanted to be some sort of minority group. But the reason it
Yeah.
was funny, that wasn't the reason it was funny. It was more. he's saying this and he's saying it like a whisper, but behind him is like dun 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 dun, and just it's an audio represent. It's the audio equivalent of a Guinness shit. That is how I would
Oh,
describe that album.
yeah. Yeah. Shitting through the thread of a needle, like, but also all over your hand at the same time. Sure, like, was it Lulu was the album that James came out with that meme? Or, well, it is now a meme. But like, I am the table. And it's just, oh, lads, the amount of fucking pictures, his face slapped on the coffee table is like, oh, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know what they were thinking with that. But then again, listen, like, we're like James Hetfield is worth, I think, $170 million, just him alone. Like
yeah,
Metallica themselves don't actually have any money at all. It's the four members of the band that are worth the millions. Like,
yep. The band's like net worth has gone down quite a lot after I mentioned it earlier when I mentioned the festival that Metallica ran for like a year or two, and it was their own festival. They headlined it every time it'd be on. I know like the first year they did like Kill 'Em All in full, the second they did Ride the Lightning, but they would do like a second headline set where they would do like a novelty set. Like one of them, like I was mentioning, was they did album tracks that were never played live. Um, that cost them serious money, because I think a thing of it as well was like um they didn't really gauge their audience. Like if you're Metallica and you're going running a big metal festival, run a metal festival, like, do you know what I mean? Do
yeah,
like I'm not a Slipknot fan, but do what Slipknot did and have like, you know, a lineup that kind of reflects on your own thing, do you know, and you can take
yeah,
chances here or there and
yeah,
having
yeah.
different artists that play different stuff. Um,
Oh, sure,
but
man.
like
Like they
I
could have brought in like Testament and Creators, like metal
yeah,
bands. That like
that's it,
are
like, do you know, and they would have been guaranteed like to make money off of that, like, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
If you could turn around to someone in the morning and be like, here's a 2 day lineup, it's going to cost you 150 quid, because festivals in the US a lot of times are a lot cheaper than, especially here in Ireland. But
yeah,
let's say like the Saturday you're going to get fucking, like, let's say it was the first one they did. You're going to get Metallica headlining, Megadeth on support. You got Testament. Um, I don't know. Like, say you got Priest, Saxon. Blow your fucking load with the set, or blow your load with the lineup, like, do you know what I mean? Because they could literally pick whoever they fucking wanted, you know.
yeah. They could
Um,
get whoever they wanted, like,
that's it.
like
And like the
anyone that
fact that they were
love
doing.
me. That yeah. Sorry,
I'm
go on.
sorry, no, you go on. I'm after interrupting you. What were you saying?
I was kind of going off in my own head. It's like thinking like any band, like in the metal scene, like it's kind of a sad point to make, but Metallica is above them all in terms of their commercial success. Like they'd
Yeah,
love to play at those gigs. Any band would go for it because they get money for it, to get exposure, they get the whole lot. Like,
yeah, and it is the thing in hindsight is like when you look back, but you know, anyone listening back to this podcast now, and I'm even thinking back in the course of the last hour or so, is like it's the tragic tale of Metallica. Is like so much promise, and it gets better and better, and then fucking, and it's one of those things. It's like it's almost sad. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like do you know people always say their biggest fear is watching their parents grow up. God forgive me. I kind of wish, in hindsight, listening back to all these albums, I kind of wish Metallica had stopped being Metallica. Uh, I'd say as far as 1990, because I like the Black Album.
yeah.
Um, like I would have loved. I'm ranting again now. I'm going on a bit of a tangent. I'd love if if those Load and Reload albums had been James Hetfield's solo albums. Do you know what I mean? And if the
Yeah,
lads had went off and
yeah,
done different things, because you know a big thing that explains a lot of why those albums sound the way they do is Lars and James consciously don't listen to a lot of metal now, because you know they're playing with metal
yeah,
bands all the time, and you know
yeah.
they're being interviewed by all these things, or by all these metal magazines and everything like this. Like Lars is huge into electronic music, and he's more kind of into more alternative rock. Like he's a big champion for like fucking Greta Van Fleet and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And he's huge into Tame Impala and stuff. And
Yeah.
like Hetfield as well, he listened to what he was listening to when he was younger, but he's bigger into country. And it kind of
Yeah.
sounds like when they make albums now, it's kind of making them because they kind of have to make it. They're so in, they're kind of in debt now anyway over certain things they've done over the last few years, that they kind of have to be Metallica going forward for a while. Like rest assured, when COVID is kind of on the wayside, expect a fucking 3 year Metallica tour after this. I can chalk that
Yeah.
down to a
Yeah.
fact
Oh,
now.
big
Like,
time. Big
yeah,
time. Yeah. 'Cause touring is their big thing. Like,
that's it.
ever since the Black Album, like they've spent years and years touring after an album, like because they have so many gigs to play, like they're popular all over the world. And
Yeah.
like I suppose that's a good thing as well, like is in like it's great to see the shows, it's just the fucking price of them is mental.
Yeah. And sometimes like you look at some lineups they've had for some gigs and you're kind of like, something that's worth paying 100. When they played Slane, now, that was Ghost's first time playing Ireland. And I was kind of interested to see how Ghost would be live. I'm not a massive fan of Ghost at all. I'd listen to Ghost, but I wouldn't be huge into them.
Mm.
And they were not, for my money, they weren't great.
Really? Yeah.
A few mates went and saw them do their headline thing now in the Three Arena the following November and said it was a lot better. That would make sense to me. Like but the opener, man, they had fucking an Irish band. I think they were called Fan Club. Fuck me. Like, and I love Irish bands. I'll always champion for Irish bands. This was fucking horrendous. Half the
Yeah.
crowd weren't there yet. Everyone was still drinking in the car park. Three lads that wanted to be Nirvana that sounded like a really bastardized shit version of Nirvana. It was awful. But Stiff Little Fingers played as well. They were pretty good. But do you look at some lineups they've had in like fucking Germany and shit like that? And they've had like nowadays they've had Creator on lineups and shit like that. And they've had
Yeah.
like fucking oh god, like I saw what year was this? This was probably 2017. I saw that they played in oh god, where was it? I'm nearly certain this was the UK. No, it wasn't 2017. This was 2014. So I remember we were leaving certain happened. They had Motorhead, Testament, and Judas Priest, obviously not in that order, supporting them on a gig in the UK. And I just thought, Jesus
Holy
fucking Christ.
shit. What a lineup to have, like when you compare that with what they had there in Ireland.
Yeah, do
Like,
you know what I mean?
Jesus Christ, man. Fucking hell, that's no comparison whatsoever. Like, it sure wasn't it like back 10 years ago they had your man that fucked a load of kids.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was it anyone
John
like
was saying that before they had lost profits in like
that?
2003 or something like that, and the crowd
Was that
apparently were
that bad?
spending. Yeah, no, it would have been because they. I don't think they ever really had much of a following here, but I'm not really the one to know about that because that's before even fucking, that's before air. Like, that it's that's not like fucking 80s trash where it's a bit timeless. Uh,
Yeah,
that lost profit stuff is very much a product of the early 2000s. But
yeah.
I'm looking at the time now, sir. I have occupied you for about an hour and 50 minutes. Uh,
Fucking,
I didn't realize it had been that long that we were talking for.
what fucking hell? Jesus Christ. I'm paying me for this one. I check is in six.
Well, I tell you this much: I do definitely owe you a few cans or so, or a few pints when stuff opens up after this. My
Man alone,
sincerest
man.
thanks for hopping on, and as well as that, I would like to offer you an invitation to come back on at some point to do the
No
exact
fucking
same
problem.
thing about the albums of Creator. It will take a
Oh,
while because I
100%.
haven't listened to all of them. So I'll have to
Yeah.
catch up. It will take me a bit of time. And I have one or two of these kind of booked in with other people now over the next few weeks. But we definitely need to make that one happen. And we should get Mr. Griffey involved in that one too, I think. I think
But a
his
bit
take on
greater.
modern his take on modern creator, I think would be very good.
Yeah, actually, I'd be interested to see that because, yeah, no, listen, I won't get into it now, but we'll have a good old chat with the new creator out and stuff.
Perfect stuff. Do you want to name drop anything to do with your brand new Age Messiah before we call it a day here tonight?
Well, we have our artwork done for our kind of merch and stuff like that. We're hoping to have kind of t-shirts and stuff, patches and whatnot done soon. We paid a artist, Obsidian Imagery.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic guy. He was great to work with. He was very engaging and everything. He took our ideas on board. We're hoping to have merch out soon, and we were supposed to have an EP fucking last year, but
But
just with
lockdown,
everything
sure.
going on, like lockdown, sure. And like there was a very sad passing of Danny McDonough as well. Like that
Oh
was
shit! And
awful.
it's his anniversary the day we're recording this now as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until just
I
before we
can't believe.
started.
Yeah. Big shout out to him. I hope he's resting easy, man. That was awful sad. Like, but yeah, we're hoping to get into the studio soon. We're definitely going to do it in his name as well. Like, 'cause he deserves it more than anyone. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully, like, I'm going to say by the end of summer we'll have our EP done, and definitely check it out because there's some great tunes on it. It'll be absolutely fantastic, juice. And yeah, no, really looking forward to it. I'm just really looking forward to going back and playing live gigs like as well, like because man, like the playing with New Age Live, especially in Limerick, like there's so much crack, like there's such good crowds there and everything.
And you always
Um,
have a crowd too with New Age. Every time you play
yeah,
Limerick,
yeah,
you'll always have people there. Like,
Yeah. Fact about it. Like, can't wait for that. But fucking cheers for having me on, man. Great chatting.
Ah, not a bother. And I'll tell you this firsthand, I am very much looking forward to that EP launch. That is going to be fucking savage crack. If you don't do like an event for that now, I'll be very put out. I don't want to hear anything about you doing some opening slots somewhere. Get the Milk Market Bear, get two other bands on them before you do a long enough set, play the EP in full, launch it properly, like, do you know what I mean? I'm very much looking forward to that.
We play Saint Anger as the opener. Just do the album from start to finish and piss everyone off.
Chicken Man, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for hopping on this episode and look forward to having you another episode of the show.
Not at all, man. Thanks a million.
Not a bother. All right, so that was our best to worst ranking of the Metallica albums with Mr. Cian Hehir of Limerick thrash metal band New Age Messiah. Had fucking savage crack recording that episode of the show, and rest assured Chicken will be back in some capacity at some point in the future. I mentioned the idea to him after we wrapped up the recording of that episode of the show about doing one about Creator down the line. But you know something, Creator have a way bigger discography than Metallica do. So if we do that, we were saying we might have another mate of ours on it, and I'm not going to say who it is, yes, just in case he declines the offer, and I don't want to embarrass myself, or have my embarrassment on record. But might have three heads on to talk about the Creator discography at some point. But I need to go and listen to the latter part of their discography, and as well as that, we need to pick a date that works with for us between work. The lads are Cian is full time employed. The mate that I've in mind to be on the Creator episode of that is working full time as well, and then I have full time work on my placement and my college, so it's a bit of a ball breaker trying to organise dates. But look, we'll have that come to you at some point. Maybe not. Maybe don't expect it to be the next one. I'll just say it like that. That's the safest way to put it. Anyways, so yeah. Support the lads. Oh, touch my mic. Support the lads in New Age Messiah if you are soundly inclined. You can find them again on Instagram at New Age Messiah, and you can find them on Facebook too. Like Chicken mentioned there at the end of the interview, they have an EP. Hopefully, they're going to hopefully have it recorded by the end of the summer, and I would fully expect that to be out at some point in the autumn. Would not be surprised if it dropped the weekend of the Siege if the Siege goes ahead. Fingers crossed. So yeah. Again, really enjoyed putting that one together, and look forward to doing more episodes in that vein down the line too. I will definitely go out of my way to do more niche bands as time goes on, but you know, for the first few of these, makes sense that I'll cover the bigger bands and stuff like that, just to make it kind of, you know, so everyone's kind of familiar with what we're talking about and stuff like that. Because if we do a niche band, a band that not many people know, we need to be able to throw comparatives for people listening as well, which is only fair, and that in itself can take time too. So next week's episode of the show, I'm scheduled to be recording it tomorrow. I mentioned the idea, or the topic I should say, for it about 2 weeks ago. A record store owner from my hometown of Ennis in County Clare passed away this time last year, and his name was David Woodford. He very, very good friend of my father's, and I would have considered him a very good friend of mine as well now, to be quite honest, before he passed away. I'm not going to get into it too much because we will be touching on it on that episode of the show. But the reason I'm even mentioning it now at the tail end of this episode is because I announced it last week that it was going to be one of the future episodes. But unfortunately, David's mother passed away the day before yesterday. So actually the evening that I recorded that episode of the podcast with Cian about the Metallica albums, his mother passed away. And one of the guests that I was hoping to have on for David's episode, maybe, I would imagine the funeral is going to be tomorrow, I'm not 100% sure. But I am assuming that one of the guests that I was hoping to have on for that may be at the funeral and maybe with the family. So I may have to push that episode back by a week or two. If I do have to push it back by a week or two, don't worry, I'm covered. Got plenty of stuff to keep you guys entertained over the coming weeks, and there will be no more breaks from the depths for the foreseeable future. Got something to keep us going every week, and especially because of the fact that I don't have to do a radio show on top of it as well, frees up a lot of my week too. So if you have any ideas, any topics, any themes you want me to talk about, if there is anything you would like to see happen on the show, be sure to get in contact. Let us know how we're doing. I'm very much aiming for this to be a listener orientated program. Not that I'm going to totally orientated around people or anything like that. But I would like the idea of people being able to actively get engaged with the show in any way they can. So if you want to do that, if you want to get in touch, be sure to do so at From the Depths Metal on Instagram and at From the Depths Metal Radio on Facebook. And if you enjoy this show, we have plenty more. We have plenty more previous episodes available on both Spotify and YouTube. I have said in the past that I would go and start uploading these onto iTunes, but I just realised that, I'm paying about 30 odd quid to use Acast a month and they distribute it, so they should really be doing that. So I'm going to look into that. So hopefully all past episodes will be up on iTunes over the course of the next week or so. Had a message asking me if I will start doing video podcasts over time, and the simple answer to that, unfortunately, is no. The reason for that is just I don't have the time to edit video at the moment. It's as simple as that. Once college is out of the way, we may look into it. What I may start doing as well is I do have big interviews scheduled over the coming months and stuff like that, some of which I need to follow up with regards to correspondence, but those will all be recorded over Zoom for 9 times out of 10 to be recorded over Zoom. And what I may do is I may upload the Zoom call, the video of the Zoom call onto YouTube. If that is something that you'd like to see me do, be sure to get in touch. Anyway, that is 2 hours, 4 minutes and 40 seconds worth of an episode of the From the Depths podcast. I say you're sick of listening to me talk for this week. So lads, until next week, I will love you and leave you. Good night, God bless, and thank you very, very much for checking out another episode of the From the Depths podcast. My name is Emmett, and as always, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week.